Think about your morning routine, the alarm clock that wakes you up, the toothbrush you reach for, the coffee maker that brews your first cup. Now picture a world where none of these things existed. It's almost impossible, right? But here's the thing. Every single one of these everyday conveniences traces its roots back to ancient innovations, many of which have been lost to history. Today, we're diving into 42 little-known ancient inventions that changed the world forever, and you'll soon realize just how much we owe to the brilliance of our ancestors. These weren't just random gadgets or fleeting ideas. They were the building blocks of civilization itself, quietly shaping the course of humanity in ways we rarely stop to appreciate. Take a moment to consider the wheel. It's so fundamental that we barely think about it, but without it, modern transportation, machinery, even industry as we know it would collapse. Yet, the wheel is just the tip of the iceberg. Hidden beneath the surface of history are dozens of other inventions, equally revolutionary but far less celebrated. From the intricate water clocks that measured time with stunning precision to the forgotten surgical tools that saved countless lives, these innovations were light years ahead of their time. And here's what's truly mind-blowing: many of them were so advanced that they wouldn't be rediscovered or replicated for centuries. How did these ideas vanish? Why aren't they taught in every history class? The answers might surprise you. This isn't just a journey through time. It's a revelation of how human ingenuity has always pushed boundaries, even in the most unexpected ways. These ancient inventors didn't have the technology we take for granted today, yet they solved problems with creativity and precision that still leave modern engineers in awe. As we uncover these 42 hidden gems, you'll start to see the threads connecting the past to the present, and you might even wonder what other groundbreaking ideas are still buried, waiting to be rediscovered. So settle in, because by the end of this exploration, you'll never look at history or the world around you the same way again. Buried beneath the waves for over 2,000 years, the Antikythera Mechanism was discovered by sponge divers in 1901, lying among the wreckage of an ancient Greek ship. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a lump of corroded bronze, but closer examination revealed something extraordinary: an intricate system of interlocking gears, precisely calibrated dials, and inscriptions that pointed to a function far beyond anything else from its era. This wasn't just a tool, it was a masterpiece of engineering capable of predicting solar eclipses, tracking the cycles of the moon, and even forecasting the dates of the Olympic Games with pinpoint accuracy. What makes this device so astonishing isn't just its complexity. It's the fact that nothing even remotely similar would appear again until the mechanical clocks of medieval Europe, more than 1,000 years later. The Greeks of the 1st century BC had no modern machine shops, no computer-aided designs, yet they built a mechanism so advanced that historians initially assumed it had to be a later artifact misplaced in the wreck. The gears alone are a marvel, cut with such precision that they could model the irregular motions of the moon, accounting for its elliptical orbit, a concept not fully understood again until the time of Kepler. But here's the real mystery: who were the minds behind this device? The Antikythera Mechanism hints at a lost tradition of mechanical genius, a school of thought that may have produced other wonders we'll never know about. Some scholars believe it was the work of Hipparchus, the father of trigonometry, while others link it to the legendary workshops of Archimedes. What we do know is that this single artifact rewrites our understanding of ancient innovation. It wasn't just about philosophy or art. These were people who thought in gears and equations, solving problems with a sophistication that still leaves modern engineers speechless. And yet, for all its brilliance, the Antikythera mechanism was forgotten, its secrets sinking into obscurity until a chance discovery brought it back to light. That raises a haunting question: how many other world-changing inventions have been lost to time? If something this advanced could vanish so completely, what else might still be waiting beneath the sands or the sea, ready to reshape our view of history? The mechanism isn't just a relic. It's a reminder that the past is far more inventive, far more daring than we often give it credit for. While the Antikythera mechanism reveals the ancient world's brilliance in precision engineering, the Romans mastered something equally groundbreaking: materials science. Picture this: modern concrete highways crack after a few decades, yet the Pantheon's dome has stood unbroken for nearly 2,000 years, weathering earthquakes, wars, and the relentless passage of time. The secret: a recipe so advanced that today's scientists are still scrambling to decode it. Roman concrete wasn't just strong, it was self-healing. The magic lay in a simple but ingenious mix: volcanic ash from the region of Pozzuoli, blended with lime and seawater. When cracks formed, a chemical reaction with water would trigger the growth of new mineral crystals, sealing the gaps like nature's own repair kit. Modern concrete, by contrast, relies on steel reinforcements that rust and weaken over time, leaving structures vulnerable. But the Romans didn't just build for their era, they built for eternity. Their harbors, submerged in the Mediterranean for centuries, emerged stronger over time as the saltwater strengthened the chemical bonds in the material. What's even more astonishing is how this knowledge vanished. By the Middle Ages, the recipe had been lost, and Europe wouldn't see concrete's revival until the 18th century, even then, without its self-healing properties. Recent studies suggest the Romans might have stumbled onto nanotechnology, with the volcanic ash creating microscopic structures that reinforced the material at an atomic level. Could their builders have understood more about chemistry than we've given them credit for? The Pantheon's dome, still the world's largest unreinforced concrete structure, stands as a silent challenge to modern engineering. Its endurance forces us to ask, how many other ancient material secrets have we forgotten? From the pyramids to the aqueducts, these weren't just feats of labor, they were triumphs of innovation. And perhaps somewhere in the rubble of history, there's another Roman recipe waiting to rewrite our textbooks. After all, if concrete could outlast empires, what else might the ancients have known that we've yet to rediscover? Imagine living in a world where earthquakes struck without warning, no alerts, no predictions, just the sudden terror of the ground shaking beneath you. Now picture this: in the year 132, nearly 2,000 years before modern seismographs, a Chinese inventor named Zhang unveiled a device so advanced it could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away. His creation, known as the Hufeng Didongyi, wasn't just a lucky guess. It was a meticulously engineered masterpiece that tapped into principles of physics we still rely on today. At first glance, the device looked like a giant bronze urn, adorned with 8 dragons perched around its rim, each holding a metal ball in its mouth. Below them sat 8 bronze frogs, mouths open, ready to catch whatever might fall. But here's where it gets fascinating. Inside the vessel hung a carefully balanced pendulum, sensitive to the faintest tremors. When an earthquake struck, even far beyond the horizon, the pendulum would sway, triggering one of the dragons to release its ball into the waiting frog below. The direction of the fallen ball pointed to the earthquake's origin, while the sound of metal clanging against bronze served as an unmistakable alarm. What's truly staggering is how accurate it was. Historical records describe one instance where the device detected a quake more than 400 miles away, so distant that local officials hadn't felt a thing. Skeptical at first, they sent messengers to the region, only to find entire villages leveled by the unseen tremor. This wasn't magic, it was science. Zhang had harnessed inertia, the same principle that keeps a coffee cup steady on a moving train, to sense vibrations no human could perceive. But here's the real question. How did an inventor in the 2nd century grasp concepts that wouldn't be formally defined until Newton's time? Some scholars believe Zhang Heng's work was influenced by earlier observations of earthquake aftershocks and falling objects, while others argue he may have experimented with suspended weights to mimic ground motion. Whatever his methods, his device reveals a startling truth. Ancient innovators didn't just stumble upon discoveries, they engineered solutions with a precision that rivals modern tools. And yet, like so many breakthroughs of the ancient world, the secrets of the Hufeng Didongyi faded into history. The device itself was lost, surviving only in descriptions and reconstructions. Today's seismographs, though far more sensitive, operate on the same foundational idea, measuring ground movement through suspended masses. It makes you wonder, what other revolutionary ideas from the past remain hidden in the cracks of history, waiting to be rediscovered? Zhang Heng's earthquake detector isn't just a relic, it's a testament to human curiosity, proving that the drive to understand and predict the world around us is as old as civilization itself. Long before stained glass adorned cathedrals or mirrors reflected our faces, the Mesopotamians were transforming humble sand into something extraordinary. Around 3500 BCE, in the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, an accidental discovery changed the course of craftsmanship forever. When sand met the intense heat of their kilns, likely during metalworking, a shimmering, translucent material emerged. At first, it was brittle and opaque, but through relentless experimentation, these early artisans unlocked the secrets of glassmaking, turning a geological fluke into one of humanity's most versatile materials. What began as simple beads, vibrant blue and green ornaments traded across continents, soon evolved into something far more profound. Mesopotamian glassmakers pioneered techniques like core forming, where molten glass was wound around a clay mold to create intricate vessels, and milliphiry, where colored rods of glass were fused into dazzling patterns. These weren't just decorations, they were status symbols traded as far as Egypt and the Indus Valley, weaving a web of commerce that connected ancient superpowers. But the real revolution lay in something we take for granted today: transparency. By refining their mixtures and firing processes, they achieved the first clear glass, paving the way for lenses, windows, and scientific instruments that would reshape the world centuries later. Here's the twist: while we celebrate Roman aqueducts and Greek philosophy, Mesopotamian glass rarely gets its due in the grand narrative of progress. Perhaps it's because their breakthroughs were so quietly pervasive, woven into the fabric of daily life rather than towering over cityscapes. Yet without their innovations, there would be no microscopes to reveal cells, no telescopes to explore the cosmos, no eyeglasses to correct vision. Even the smartphone screen you're staring at now owes a debt to those ancient experimenters who first wrestled silica into submission. The irony, some of their methods remain unmatched. Modern artisans still struggle to replicate the vivid cobalt blues of Mesopotamian glass, which derived their brilliance from trace amounts of copper and cobalt elements they somehow identified and harnessed without modern chemistry. How did they stumble upon such precise formulas? The answer may lie in their meticulous record-keeping. Cuneiform tablets detail recipes and trade secrets, proving this was no happy accident but a disciplined science. So why does history overlook them? Maybe because glassmaking, like so many ancient technologies, became so universal that its origins faded into obscurity. But next time you glance through a window or admire a glass sculpture, remember, it all began with anonymous Mesopotamian innovators whose legacy, like their creations, remains crystal clear. Walk through any modern pharmacy, and you'll see shelves lined with antibacterial creams and sun-blocking lotions, products designed to protect as much as they beautify. But the idea of cosmetics pulling double duty isn't new at all. Rewind to ancient Egypt, where eye makeup wasn't just about striking looks, it was a survival tool. The iconic kohl eyeliner, with its dramatic black and green hues, did far more than accentuate the eyes of pharaohs and commoners alike. It shielded them from the relentless desert sun and fought off infections lurking in the Nile's waters. The secret lay in the ingredients. Egyptians ground galena, a lead-based mineral, into fine powder for their signature black kohl, while malachite, a vibrant green copper ore, created lighter shades. At first glance, using lead might sound alarming, but recent research reveals a startling twist. In tiny doses, lead ions actually stimulated the immune system, helping ward off eye infections common in the marshy Nile Delta. The makeup's thick application also acted as a physical barrier against bacteria and flies, while the dark pigment reduced glare from the sun, much like modern athletes smearing black grease under their eyes. But here's what's truly remarkable. This wasn't haphazard experimentation. Egyptian medical papyri, like the Ebers papyrus, detailed precise recipes and rituals for preparing kohl, often invoking the protection of gods like Horus. They understood its medicinal properties well enough to prescribe it for ailments beyond cosmetics. Archaeologists have even found kohl tubes buried with children, suggesting it was considered essential for health, not just adornment. What's often overlooked is how advanced their understanding of chemistry was. By mixing fats or oils with powdered minerals, they created formulations that adhered smoothly to skin, a primitive version of today's long-wear cosmetics. Some recipes included antimicrobial ingredients like frankincense, proving they recognized the link between cleanliness and prevention. Yet for all its ingenuity, kohl's dual purpose faded from common knowledge. Modern makeup prioritizes aesthetics over function, leaving us to rediscover what the Egyptians knew all along: beauty and biology can be intertwined. Their innovations force us to reconsider how many other ancient remedies like honey for wounds or garlic for infections were dismissed as folk wisdom before science caught up. Perhaps the real lesson isn't just about eyeliner, but about recognizing the hidden genius in traditions we've too quickly labeled primitive. After all, if a civilization without microscopes could harness chemistry to protect their sight, what other wisdom have we yet to unpack from the past? Picture a fleet of enemy ships advancing under cover of darkness, their wooden hulls cutting silently through the waves until suddenly, the sea itself seems to erupt in flames. Jets of liquid fire arch through the air, clinging to sails and decks, burning even as sailors desperately try to douse it with water. This wasn't medieval warfare as usual. This was Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's most closely guarded secret, a weapon so devastating it could turn the tide of battles and secure naval dominance for centuries. The exact recipe remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, but we know this much: Greek fire wasn't just ordinary flame. It was a sticky, napalm-like substance that adhered to whatever it touched, igniting ships and men alike, and most terrifyingly burning even on water. Some accounts describe it as being launched through bronze tubes mounted on ships, creating a flamethrower effect centuries before modern warfare conceived such devices. The Byzantines called it liquid fire, and its psychological impact was as potent as its physical destruction. Enemy fleets would scatter at the mere rumor of its presence, knowing escape was nearly impossible once the flames took hold. What made this weapon so revolutionary wasn't just its brutality, it was the chemistry behind it. Historians and scientists have spent decades trying to reverse engineer the formula, piecing together clues from ancient texts and secondary accounts. The most plausible theories suggest a mixture of crude petroleum, pine resin for stickiness, and quicklime, which could explain its ability to ignite on contact with water. Some speculate sulfur or saltpeter might have been added to intensify the combustion, but the true genius lay in its delivery system, pressurized siphons that could project the flaming liquid in a controlled stream, a technological leap that wouldn't be matched until the 20th century. And yet, for all its power, Greek fire's greatest strength was also its downfall. The Byzantines guarded the secret so fiercely that only a handful of artisans and military commanders ever knew the full recipe. Manuscripts hint at imperial workshops where the mixture was prepared in secrecy, with laborers sworn to silence on pain of death. When Constantinople finally fell in 1453, the knowledge vanished with the empire's collapse, leaving behind only legends and the charred remnants of naval battles. This raises a haunting question: how many other military innovations of the ancient world were lost to time? Greek fire wasn't an isolated case. The Chinese had fire lances and gunpowder arrows, while the Syrians developed early forms of chlorine gas. But none were as mysteriously effective as the Byzantine flame. Some historians argue that its disappearance might have been a blessing in disguise had the formula spread. The medieval world might have seen even more devastating conflicts. What's undeniable is the legacy it left behind. Greek fire reshaped naval warfare, forcing enemies to rethink strategy and ship design. It was the ancient equivalent of a deterrent, a weapon so feared that its mere existence could dictate the terms of engagement. Today, modern incendiaries like napalm echo its principles, proving that even the most closely guarded secrets of the past can find eerie parallels in the present. So the next time you hear about an unbeatable weapon, remember Greek fire, a reminder that the most powerful inventions aren't just about destruction, but about the minds who knew when to unleash them and when to let their secrets fade into history. High in the Andes, where the air thins and the clouds cling to mountain peaks, the Inca Empire built one of history's most sophisticated civilizations without ever putting pen to paper. Instead of ink and parchment, they used something far more unexpected. Knots, miles of intricately tied cords known as quipu, dangled from the hands of Inca record keepers, each twist and loop encoding numbers, stories, and possibly even poetry. At first glance, these tangled threads might look like simple accounting tools, but recent discoveries suggest they could be one of the ancient world's most complex and misunderstood forms of communication. The genius of the quipu lay in its elegant simplicity. Made from cotton or llama wool, each cord featured a series of knots tied at precise intervals, with variations in their spacing, color, and even the direction of the twists conveying different meanings. The Inca used them to track everything from tax collections and crop yields to census data and military logistics, essentially functioning as a three-dimensional spreadsheet. But here's where it gets fascinating. Some quipu go far beyond mere numbers. Certain cords contain clusters of knots that don't align with mathematical patterns, leading scholars to theorize they might represent syllables, names, or even narratives. Imagine an entire epic poem or historical chronicle hidden in a bundle of strings. Deciphering these knots has become one of archaeology's most tantalizing puzzles. Unlike hieroglyphs or cuneiform, there's no Rosetta Stone for quipu, no bilingual text to unlock their secrets. yet researchers have made startling progress. By comparing Quipu knots to Spanish colonial records of Inca tributes, they've cracked portions of the numerical code. The knots' positions correspond to place values, ones, tens, hundreds, much like the digits in our modern number system. But the non-numerical knots remain a mystery. Were they labels, mnemonic devices, or could they be a full-fledged writing system, as intricate as the weaving traditions the Inca perfected? What's often overlooked is how revolutionary this system was for its time. While Europe relied on cumbersome Roman numerals, the Inca had essentially invented a binary-like code, using knots as data points long before the digital age. Their record keepers, known as Quipucamayos, weren't just clerks. They were human hard drives, trained from childhood to read the chords by touch and memory. Spanish chroniclers wrote with a mix of awe and frustration about these experts, who could recount decades of history or the contents of imperial storehouses without glancing at a single page. The tragedy, of course, is how much was lost. When the Spanish conquered the Inca in the 16th century, they dismissed Quipu as pagan artifacts, destroying thousands in their campaign to erase indigenous culture. Only about 600 survive today, many tucked away in museum archives, their messages frozen in time. But modern technology offers new hope. Advanced imaging and machine learning are now being used to analyze knot patterns at a scale impossible for the human eye, teasing out subtle variations that might hold linguistic clues. So why does this matter? Because the Quipu forces us to rethink what writing really means. We're so accustomed to associating history with alphabets and ink that we've overlooked the possibility of information woven into fiber. If these knots do encode language, it would rewrite our understanding of Andean civilization, proving that innovation isn't bound by the tools we expect. The Quipu isn't just a relic, it's a challenge, daring us to expand our definition of knowledge itself. After all, if a civilization could build Machu Picchu without wheels or iron, why couldn't they invent a language without letters? Perhaps the answers are still hanging by a thread, waiting to be untangled. In the heart of Delhi, beneath the shadow of the Qutub Minar, stands a silent sentinel that has defied the laws of chemistry for 16 centuries. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, a 23-foot-tall column weighing over 6 tons, bears not a single speck of rust despite enduring monsoons, pollution, and the passage of empires. Modern metallurgists have spent decades puzzling over its secret because this isn't just ancient craftsmanship, it's a material science breakthrough that our best stainless steels still struggle to match. The pillar's resilience comes down to one unexpected ingredient, phosphorus. Unlike contemporary iron alloys that rely on chromium for corrosion resistance, this 4th century masterpiece contains an unusually high percentage of phosphorus, nearly 1% of its composition. When the iron was smelted, the phosphorus reacted with oxygen to form a thin, invisible protective layer called mesowite, essentially creating a self-healing shield against rust. Even microscopic scratches repair themselves as the phosphorus reacts with moisture in the air. What's astonishing is that this wasn't accidental. Ancient Indian metalworkers, known as the Lohars, deliberately added iron ore rich in phosphorus during forging, a technique documented in texts like the Arthashastra. But here's the real mystery. Why did this knowledge disappear? Modern industry only rediscovered phosphorus's anti-corrosion properties in the 20th century, yet the Lohars had perfected it by the Gupta Empire. Their furnaces, fueled by charcoal and operated with hand bellows, reached temperatures high enough to purify the iron while preserving the phosphorus, a delicate balance even modern smelters find challenging. Some scholars believe the technique was lost during invasions, while others argue it was so closely guarded that it died with master craftsmen. Either way, the pillar remains as a taunting reminder of how advanced ancient metallurgy truly was. What's often overlooked is the pillar's cultural significance. Inscriptions reveal it was originally erected as a victory monument for King Chandragupta II, its rust-free surface symbolizing the eternal nature of his reign. The ancients didn't just see metal as a tool, they imbued it with meaning, crafting materials that could outlast kingdoms. Today, scientists are racing to adapt this ancient nanotechnology for everything from bridge cables to surgical implants, proving that innovation isn't always about inventing something new. Sometimes it's about rediscovering what we've forgotten. The iron pillar forces us to reconsider the narrative of progress. We assume modern alloys are superior, yet here's a 1600-year-old artifact that outperforms them. How many other forgotten alloys might hold solutions to today's engineering challenges? From Damascus steel's legendary sharpness to Chinese bronze mirrors that reflected with uncanny clarity, the past is littered with material miracles we've yet to fully understand. Perhaps the key to future breakthroughs doesn't lie in labs alone, but in decoding the wisdom of those who mastered metal long before the periodic table existed. After all, if a single pillar can silently defy corrosion for millennia, what other secrets might still be buried in the annals of ancient science? In the scorching deserts of ancient Persia, where summer temperatures could melt stone, engineers devised a cooling system so effective it turned homes into oases without a single watt of electricity. These weren't just clever tricks with shade or water. They were architectural marvels called windcatchers, towering structures that harnessed the wind itself to chill buildings centuries before modern air conditioning. Picture a slender tower rising high above a clay brick home, its open face tilted precisely to catch even the faintest breeze. As the wind rushed down the shaft, it passed over underground water channels or cool earthen walls, dropping the air temperature by as much as 20 degrees before flowing into living spaces. This wasn't just ventilation, it was climate control engineered to perfection. The secret lay in the physics. Persian architects understood that hot air rises, so they designed wind catchers with multiple openings to create a convection current. Some towers even had adjustable vents to direct airflow based on wind direction, while internal baffles filtered out dust and sand, a necessity in the arid landscape. The coolest air settled in basements or subterranean chambers called qanats, where families would retreat during the day's peak heat. In some cities like Yazd, entire neighborhoods were planned around wind catchers, their silhouettes dotting the skyline like a forest of ancient skyscrapers. The system was so efficient that ice could be stored in underground pits through blistering summers, a luxury even modern refrigerators struggle to replicate without power. What's astonishing is how these designs tailored solutions to their environment. Coastal versions used moist sea breezes to humidify dry air, while desert models maximized cooling through evaporation. The barragel of Oman, a cousin to the wind catcher, incorporated wet cloth or straw to enhance the chill, essentially an early swamp cooler. And unlike energy-guzzling AC units, wind catchers operated silently, required zero maintenance, and lasted for generations with minimal materials, just clay, wood, and ingenuity. Today, as the world grapples with soaring energy costs and carbon emissions, architects are revisiting these ancient blueprints. Modern, bioclimatic buildings from Portugal to Arizona now integrate wind catcher-inspired features, proving that passive cooling isn't just a relic, it's a viable alternative. Researchers at the University of Cambridge found that retrofitting contemporary homes with wind catcher principles could slash cooling energy use by up to 90%. Even high-tech firms are taking notes. One startup recently developed a solar-powered hybrid wind catcher that combines traditional design with photovoltaic panels, creating a zero-emission cooling system for off-grid communities. Yet the real lesson isn't just about technology, it's about mindset. The Persians didn't fight their environment, they collaborated with it, turning constraints into innovations. In an age where air conditioning accounts for nearly 10% of global electricity consumption, their approach feels less like history and more like a roadmap. Imagine if every glass-walled skyscraper had borrowed from these ancient towers instead of relying on mechanical fixes. The Windcatcher's legacy whispers a challenge. Sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the newest one, but the wisest one we've forgotten. As temperatures rise and grids strain, perhaps it's time to let the desert's ancient architects show us the way forward, one breeze at a time. Deep in the rainforests of Mesoamerica, where towering ceiba trees stretched toward the heavens, the Maya performed a kind of alchemy that would revolutionize materials science, centuries before Charles Goodyear patented vulcanization. They didn't just harvest rubber from the sapodilla tree, they transformed it. Through a process so precise it borders on ritual, they turned sticky, white latex into elastic balls for sacred games, waterproof shoes for traversing swamps, and even adhesive bindings for tool handles. This wasn't mere trial and error, it was chemistry mastered without a single written formula. The magic began with the latex itself, collected in ceramic cups tied to rubber trees. But raw latex is brittle when dry and rots quickly, useless for anything lasting. The Mayas' breakthrough came when they discovered that mixing the sap with juice from morning glory vines created a chemical reaction, stabilizing the rubber into a durable, bouncy material. Modern scientists have since identified the secret. Compounds in the vine juice, likely sulfur-containing amino acids, acted as primitive vulcanizing agents, linking the latex's polymer chains just like Goodyear's 19th century process. The result, rubber that could withstand the brutal impact of the Mayas' infamous ball game, where players hurled solid rubber spheres weighing up to 9 pounds without gloves or padding, using only their hips and elbows. But the ingenuity didn't stop there. Archaeologists have found evidence of rubberized textiles in Oaxaca, where artisans dipped fabric in latex mixtures to create waterproof cloaks and bags, an ancient precursor to modern rain gear. Even more startling are the rubber binders used to secure axe heads to wooden handles, proving the Maya understood rubber's versatility as both a flexible adhesive and a shock absorber. What's often overlooked is the cultural weight of these innovations. The ball game wasn't just sport, it was cosmology in motion, with the rubber ball symbolizing the sun's journey across the sky. The bouncing, unpredictable movement of the ball mirrored the Maya's view of existence itself, a universe governed by elastic forces and cyclical rebirth. Rubber, then, wasn't just a material, it was a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. Yet for all its sophistication, this knowledge vanished with the collapse of Maya civilization. When Spanish conquistadors witnessed the ball game in the 16th century, they dismissed it as pagan spectacle, failing to grasp the science behind the bouncing spheres. It would take 300 more years for industrial societies to rediscover vulcanization, and even then, modern rubber lacks the ritual significance the Maya imbued in every stretch and bounce. Today, researchers are unraveling even more surprises. Some Maya rubber samples show traces of ash or lime, suggesting they may have experimented with different additives to tweak elasticity and durability. Others speculate that certain rubber artifacts were deliberately tuned to produce sounds when struck, adding an auditory dimension to the ball game's spectacle. The real tragedy: we'll never know the full extent of their rubbercraft. Unlike metal or stone, organic materials like latex rarely survive centuries in humid climates. Every surviving rubber artifact is a miracle of preservation, and a reminder of how much more the Maya might have achieved. Their legacy challenges the assumption that innovation follows a linear path. After all, if a civilization without metallurgy could engineer materials that still baffle modern chemists, what other ancient secrets might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to see them not as primitive but as peerless? Imagine sailing through the North Atlantic under a sky so thick with clouds that neither sun nor stars pierce the gloom, a death sentence for any medieval navigator. Yet Viking longships crisscrossed these treacherous waters for centuries, reaching as far as Newfoundland without compasses or charts. How? The answer may lie in an unassuming crystal tucked into a sailor's pouch, the sunstone. These translucent chunks of calcite found across Scandinavia possess a property that seems ripped from science fiction. They can reveal the sun's position even when it's completely hidden. When light passes through calcite, it splits into two beams, a phenomenon called birefringence. By rotating the crystal until both beams match in brightness, a navigator could pinpoint the sun's location with eerie accuracy, even at twilight or through dense fog. Archaeologists discovered one such crystal aboard a 16th century English shipwreck, still capable of determining solar position within 5 degrees. But here's what's truly astonishing. Viking sagas mention sunstones as early as the 9th century, describing their use to find the sun when the gods hid it. Recent experiments prove the method works. Modern pilots using replicas successfully navigated overcast skies just as the Norse might have. Yet the sunstone was only part of their toolkit. Viking navigators were masters of environmental clues, reading waves like maps and tracking the flight paths of seabirds returning to land. They carried bearing dials or wooden discs that tracked shadows to maintain course, and likely used wave polarization, observing how light scattered across water surfaces to gauge direction. Some scholars believe they even had mental star maps, memorizing constellations' seasonal shifts to navigate long before the magnetic compass reached Europe. What sets the Norse apart isn't just their ingenuity, but their willingness to trust natural phenomena over rigid dogma. While Mediterranean sailors clung to coastlines, fearing the open ocean, Vikings embraced the sea's mysteries, turning optics into a survival skill. Their sunstones challenge our assumptions about medieval science. This wasn't superstition, but applied physics centuries before Newton explained light's behavior. The real question isn't whether they used these crystals, but how many other cultures might have harnessed similar technologies lost to time. Polynesian voyagers read ocean swells and star paths, while Arab traders navigated by lunar mansions. Each civilization developed its own GPS, tailored to its environment and knowledge. The Viking sunstone stands as a testament to human adaptability, proof that sometimes the most advanced tool isn't the one we invent, but the one we learn to see. Buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia, a cracked clay tablet no larger than your palm holds secrets that rewrite the history of mathematics. Known as Plimpton 322, this 4,000-year-old Babylonian artifact doesn't just list numbers. It contains a trigonometric table so advanced that scholars initially assumed it must be a modern forgery. But here's the shocker. These calculations predate Greek trigonometry by over a millennium, proving that the so-called fathers of mathematics were actually standing on the shoulders of giants. The Babylonians didn't just dabble in math, they engineered it. Their base 60 system, often dismissed as a quirk of history, turns out to be a stroke of genius. Unlike our clunky base 10 system, 60 is divisible by 12 numbers, making fractions and angles infinitely easier to calculate. That's why we still measure time in 60-second minutes and 60-minute hours. Their mathematical fingerprints are literally etched into every clock face and GPS coordinate. But their real masterpiece was the trigonometric table. By cataloging ratios of right-angled triangles, They could calculate everything from the slope of ziggurats to the distance between stars, all without the concept of angles we take for granted today. What's truly baffling is how they achieved this without the tools we associate with trigonometry. No protractors, no sine functions, just a sexagesimal place value system and an intuitive grasp of patterns. Some tablets even show they used Pythagorean triples centuries before Pythagoras was born, solving problems like, if a ladder leans against a wall and the base is 12 units from the wall, how long is the ladder? With eerie precision, their methods were so efficient that astronomers used them to predict lunar eclipses and planetary motions, laying the groundwork for both mathematics and science as we know them. So why does Hippocrates get the credit while Babylonian scribes fade into obscurity? Part of the answer lies in the fragility of their medium. Clay tablets survive far less readily than Greek parchment or Egyptian papyrus, and thousands have likely crumbled to dust. But there's another, darker reason, the long-held bias that mathematics began with the Greeks, a narrative that ignored older, non-Western contributions. Even when tablets were deciphered in the 19th century, scholars struggled to accept that primitive cultures could grasp abstract concepts, yet the evidence is undeniable. Recent multispectral imaging has revealed previously invisible calculations on weathered tablets, exposing even more sophisticated math. One lists the square root of 2 accurately to 6 decimal places, a feat Europeans wouldn't match until the Renaissance. Another details a method for tracking Jupiter's path that mirrors modern calculus techniques. These weren't just accountants recording harvest yields, they were pioneers exploring the very fabric of numerical relationships. The tragedy isn't just that their brilliance was forgotten, it's that we're still catching up. Modern researchers are now mining these tablets for forgotten algorithms that could simplify everything from computer encryption to celestial navigation. The Babylonians remind us that progress isn't always linear. Sometimes the most advanced ideas are buried in plain sight, waiting for us to recognize them. After all, if a civilization without calculators could crack problems that stump modern students, what other ancient breakthroughs might we be overlooking simply because we've forgotten how to see them? High in the misty highlands of 9th century Ethiopia, a goatherd named Kaldi noticed something peculiar. His goats, after nibbling bright red berries from a certain bush, pranced with boundless energy through the night. Curious, he sampled the berries himself and soon felt an unfamiliar alertness coursing through him. This accidental discovery, passed down through generations of oral tradition, marks the humble beginnings of one of humanity's most enduring obsessions, coffee. But what started as a local curiosity would soon ripple across continents, reshaping economies, cultures, and even the very rhythm of daily life. The journey from wild berry to global phenomenon began in Ethiopian monasteries, where monks steeped the beans in water to create a bitter, energizing drink that helped them endure long hours of prayer. Unlike the casual coffee breaks of today, this was a sacred ritual, a tool for spiritual focus. By the 15th century, coffee had crossed the Red Sea into Yemen, where Sufi mystics used it to fuel their nighttime devotions. The drink's reputation as a mental sharpener spread like wildfire, and with it came the world's first coffeehouses establishments that would become incubators of ideas, debate, and even revolution. In cities like Constantinople and Venice, these bustling hubs earned nicknames like penny universities, where the price of a cup bought not just caffeine but lively conversation and the exchange of knowledge. What's often overlooked is how radically coffee altered human behavior. Before its arrival in Europe, alcohol was the beverage of choice, even at breakfast, a necessity when water sources were often contaminated. Coffee's rise introduced a new kind of sobriety to public life, fueling the Enlightenment's intellectual fervor and the Industrial Revolution's long work shifts. The very concept of taking a coffee break traces back to these shifts in productivity and social interaction. But the plant's impact wasn't just cultural, it was ecological. As demand exploded, coffee cultivation transformed landscapes from the terraced hills of Ethiopia to the plantations of Latin America, creating one of history's first truly global commodities. Yet for all its ubiquity, coffee's origins remain shrouded in myth and mystery. The Ethiopian ceremony of Buna, where raw beans are roasted, ground, and brewed in a ritual lasting hours, is a living testament to its sacred roots. Each step from the rhythmic grinding in a mortar to the 3 rounds of pouring reflects a reverence largely lost in modern grab and go culture. Even the word coffee itself is a linguistic journey, evolving from the Ethiopian Kaffa region to the Arabic kawa, eventually becoming the Italian kaf. This raises a provocative question: how many other everyday staples began as serendipitous experiments? Like chocolate in Mesoamerica or tea in ancient China, coffee reminds us that some of civilization's most enduring innovations weren't meticulously planned. They were stumbled upon, then perfected through centuries of trial and tradition. The next time you sip your morning brew, consider this. That simple cup connects you to a 9th century Gothard, a chain of monks and merchants, and a revolution in how the world wakes up. After all, if a handful of wild berries could rewrite social history, what other forgotten discoveries might still be hiding in plain sight, waiting to energize the future? Along the rocky shores of ancient Phoenicia, a peculiar stench clung to the air, a mix of rotting shellfish and saltwater that signaled something extraordinary was underway. Workers cracked open thousands of spiny murex sea snails, extracting a tiny gland that held the secret to history's most coveted color, Tyrian purple. This wasn't just dye, it was liquid power. A single gram required the labor of 10,000 mollusks, turning each drop into a treasure worth more than silver. The process was so grueling that entire coastlines reeked for miles, yet the result was a hue so vibrant it seemed to glow with its own light, impervious to fading even after centuries in the sun. The Phoenicians, master traders of the ancient world, guarded this secret like a state secret. They built an entire industry around it, with dye factories dotting the Mediterranean from Carthage to Crete. But why such obsession over a color? In the ancient world, purple wasn't just fashionable, it was divine. The dye's rarity and difficulty to produce made it a status symbol so potent that Roman emperors reserved it exclusively for their robes, decreeing that anyone else caught wearing it faced execution. Even Cleopatra draped her ships in purple sails to flaunt her wealth, while Byzantine emperors signed documents with purple ink to signify their God-given authority. What's often forgotten is the global web this dye spun. Murex harvesting fueled trade routes stretching from Britain to India, with Phoenician merchants bartering purple cloth for spices, gems, and metals. The dye became a currency in its own right, propping up economies and funding wars. When Alexander the Great conquered Persia, he found royal storerooms stacked with purple robes, a hoard worth more than most kingdoms. But the true cost wasn't just financial. Archaeologists have uncovered mountains of crushed shells at ancient dye sites, a grim testament to the ecological toll of ancient vanity. Yet the most fascinating twist lies in the chemistry. Modern scientists analyzing Tyrian purple found it contains bromine, a rare element that stabilizes the color. How did the Phoenicians, without any knowledge of molecular science, stumble upon a formula that modern labs struggle to replicate authentically? Some scholars believe it was accidental, perhaps leftover shellfish used as bait produced a stained cloth that caught someone's eye. Others argue it was systematic experimentation, passed down through generations of artisan families. Either way, the results were so consistent across centuries that we can still identify true Tyrian purple in ancient textiles today by its unique chemical fingerprint. This raises a provocative question. How many other ancient luxuries shaped the world as profoundly? Consider Chinese silk, which Rome imported so excessively that senators railed against it, draining the empire's silver. Or Malabar pepper, so prized that Alaric the Visigoth demanded 3,000 pounds of it as ransom for sparing Rome. These weren't just commodities, they were engines of diplomacy, war, and cultural exchange. The next time you see a modern logo like Tiffany's blue or Hermès orange, remember, branding isn't a new concept. The ancients understood the power of exclusivity long before marketing departments existed, turning colors and spices into symbols that moved armies and toppled kings. Perhaps the real legacy of Tyrian purple isn't in the faded robes of emperors, but in the uncomfortable truth it reveals about human nature. We've always been willing to pay or pillage for the extraordinary, whether it's a snail's secretion or a smartphone's sleek design. The Phoenicians may be gone, but their lesson endures. Sometimes the most world-changing inventions aren't tools or machines, but the intangible allure of something rare. After all, if a color could build cities and fund fleets, what does that say about the forces that still drive our economies today? When most of us picture a boomerang, we imagine a simple curved stick that magically returns when thrown, nothing more than a clever toy. But for Australia's Aboriginal peoples, these wooden marvels were the Swiss Army knives of the ancient world. Far from just hunting tools, boomerangs served as musical instruments, ceremonial objects, fire starters, and even digging implements. Their genius lies in their aerodynamic design, a shape so finely tuned that modern engineers still study them to improve drone and aircraft technology. The returning boomerang, with its precise airfoil edges and asymmetrical wings, demonstrates an understanding of lift and spin that wouldn't be formally documented until the age of Bernoulli and Newton. Take a closer look at how they work, and the physics becomes jaw-dropping. A well-crafted boomerang isn't just spinning, it's actually flying like a helicopter blade, with the top wing moving faster through the air than the bottom one, generating uneven lift that curves its path into a circle. Aboriginal craftsmen achieved this by carving each arm at a slight twist, adjusting weight distribution until the wood practically sang through the air. Some traditional designs could travel over 200 meters before looping back to the thrower's feet with pinpoint accuracy. But here's what's even more impressive: not all boomerangs were meant to return. Heavier, non-returning varieties were lethal hunting weapons, capable of cracking kangaroo legs or dispersing flocks of birds with a single throw. Others, like the cross-shaped Kaldi, could skim the ground for astonishing distances, making them ideal for flushing out prey. Beyond their practical uses, boomerangs held deep spiritual significance. Certain ceremonial boomerangs were never meant to be thrown at all. Instead, they were clapped together as rhythm instruments during songlines, the intricate oral maps that guided Aboriginal navigation. Others bore sacred carvings, linking them to Dreamtime stories, transforming them from tools into cultural artifacts. Even the act of crafting one was ritualistic, with artisans selecting wood based on ancestral knowledge of how different trees responded to heat and moisture. Some boomerangs were even fire starters, with notches designed to create friction when rubbed against softwood, sparking flames in seconds, a trick that saved countless lives in the harsh outback. This raises a provocative question: how much of humanity's technological progress actually stems from indigenous innovation? From the Inuit kayak's hydrodynamic perfection to the Aztec Chinampa's sustainable agriculture, ancient peoples often solved problems with elegance that modern engineering struggles to replicate. The boomerang stands as a testament to knowledge systems honed over 60,000 years, a reminder that primitive is the last word we should apply to cultures that mastered flight dynamics millennia before the Wright brothers. Today, NASA studies boomerang aerodynamics for spacecraft re-entry, while surgeons apply their spinning principles to refine minimally invasive tools. Yet for all our high-tech reverse engineering, no one has improved upon the original design. Perhaps that's the real lesson here. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't the newest, but the wisdom that's been with us all along. Next time you see a boomerang in flight, remember, you're watching the world's first human-made object designed to defy gravity on command, a wooden whisper from the past that still has plenty to teach us. Inside a dimly lit Egyptian temple, a thirsty worshipper drops a coin into a slot, and moments later, holy water trickles into their cup. No priest required. This wasn't some ceremonial magic trick. It was the work of the first-century genius hero of Alexandria, whose coin-operated dispenser stands as history's earliest known vending machine. But this device wasn't just a novelty, it was a stroke of mechanical brilliance, combining levers, counterweights, and precise measurements to deliver a measured dose of sacred water in exchange for a single drachma. The mechanism was deceptively simple. The coin's weight tilted a balancing arm, opening a valve just long enough to release liquid before resetting itself, ready for the next pious customer. Hero's inventions read like a catalogue of ancient steam projects. Beyond holy water dispensers, he crafted automatic theater doors that seemed to open by ghostly hands, steam-powered toy birds that whistled, and even a primitive windmill that powered an organ. These weren't just gadgets, they were prototypes of automation, proving that the ancient world dreamed of machines that could mimic life. His eolipile, a spinning bronze sphere powered by steam jets, demonstrated principles that wouldn't reappear until the Industrial Revolution. Yet for all his ingenuity, Hero's work was often dismissed as mere entertainment, his name fading into obscurity while lesser minds took credit for ideas he pioneered centuries earlier. What makes Hero's vending machine particularly fascinating is the context. Temples used it not just for convenience, but to prevent fraud and ensuring no one took more than their fair share of sanctified water. The device embodied a blend of practicality and reverence, a mechanical solution to a very human problem, and it hints at a broader truth. The ancient world was far more technologically adventurous than we assume. From automatic wine dispensers in Roman taverns to coin-operated fortune-telling machines in Antioch, automation wasn't a modern obsession, it was an ancient one. The real tragedy is how much of this ingenuity was lost. When the great library of Alexandria burned, countless schematics and treatises vanished, leaving only fragments of Hero's work to survive. Some scholars believe his devices may have inspired later Muslim engineers during the Islamic Golden Age, while others speculate that Renaissance inventors like Da Vinci independently rediscovered principles Hero had already mastered. Either way, his legacy challenges the myth that ancient technology was stagnant. These weren't just clever toys, they were the seeds of robotics, hydraulics, and even artificial intelligence. So the next time you grab a soda from a vending machine or marvel at self-checkout kiosks, remember Hero. Behind every modern convenience lies a lineage of curiosity stretching back millennia, proving that the drive to automate, to play, and to push boundaries is as old as civilization itself. And who knows, perhaps somewhere in the sands of Egypt, another forgotten invention still waits, ready to remind us how much our ancestors truly knew. Imagine carrying a month's wages in your pocket, not as a stack of coins weighing down your belt, but as a single lightweight slip of paper. This revolutionary idea became reality in 7th century China, where merchants under the Tang dynasty grew weary of hauling sacks of bronze coins to every transaction. The solution, paper money, a concept so transformative it would reshape global commerce forever. But this wasn't just a convenience, it was a leap of faith, trusting that a piece of stamped paper could hold the same value as precious metal. The world's first banknotes, known as jiaozi, emerged in Sichuan province, where tea and silk traders exchanged them as private promissory notes. By the time Marco Polo encountered these flying money centuries later, he marveled at how an entire empire's wealth could flow through strips of mulberry bark fiber. The real genius of this system lay in its adaptability. Unlike rigid coinage, paper money could be printed in any denomination, making everything from bulk purchases to small daily trades smoother. Government mints stamped each note with elaborate designs and official seals to deter counterfeiting, an early form of security printing that still influences modern currency. But here's where the story takes a cautionary turn. The Yuan dynasty, desperate to fund wars and lavish projects, began flooding the economy with unbacked notes. The result, hyperinflation so severe that by the 14th century, stacks of money couldn't buy a single bag of rice. Sound familiar? From Weimar Germany to Zimbabwe, history keeps relearning the lesson China discovered the hard way. Money is only as stable as the trust behind it. What's often overlooked is how advanced the Tang financial system truly was. They didn't just invent paper money, they built the scaffolding of modern finance around it. Receipts from Fakian flying cash offices functioned like early checks, while grain stores doubled as rural banks, allowing farmers to deposit harvests and withdraw equivalent value elsewhere. This system of credit and trust mirrors today's digital banking, proving that the core principles of finance haven't changed, only the technology. Yet the echoes of ancient monetary policy are impossible to ignore. When the Song dynasty standardized national currency in the 11th century, they faced the same dilemmas central bankers grapple with today. How much money is too much? How to balance growth with stability? Their experiments with reserve requirements and interest rates read like a primer for modern economics. Even the term inflation finds roots in their experience. The very paper that once streamlined trade became worthless when overproduction shattered public confidence. Fast forward to the 21st century and the parallels are striking. Cryptocurrencies with their decentralized ledgers aren't so different from the tea merchant's handwritten jiaozi. Quantitative easing debates mirror the yuan's printing press excesses. Perhaps the real lesson isn't just about money, but about human nature itself, our endless dance between innovation and excess, trust and greed. The next time you tap your phone to pay, remember, you're participating in a financial revolution that began with inked mulberry paper and a bold idea. That value isn't in the object itself, but in the collective belief we place in it. Deep beneath the sands of Egypt, within the tombs of pharaohs and the vaults of ancient temples, a simple yet revolutionary invention stood guard: the pin tumbler lock. Carved from wood and bronze as early as 4000 BC, these devices weren't just barriers. They were the birth of modern security. Picture a heavy wooden bolt sliding into place, its path blocked by a series of pins that could only be lifted with a key notched to match their exact heights. Slide the right key in, and the pins aligned perfectly, allowing the bolt to glide open. Get it wrong, and the mechanism held firm, protecting treasures from thieves and spirits alike. What's astonishing isn't just the lock's age, but its endurance. The basic principle of pins and tumblers remains virtually unchanged in today's deadbolts and padlocks. a design so effective that even high-tech electronic locks often mimic its logic. Why has this ancient idea outlasted empires and industrial revolutions? The answer lies in its elegant simplicity. Unlike complex mechanisms that wear down or require precise maintenance, the pin tumbler lock is rugged, reliable, and easily adapted. Ancient Egyptian craftsmen used wood and rope. Medieval Europeans upgraded to iron. Modern manufacturers employ titanium and polymers. Yet the core idea, aligning pins to release a bolt, has never been improved upon, only refined. But the locks reveal something deeper about Egyptian society. These weren't just tools, they were symbols of order and ownership. Tomb paintings show officials carrying ornate keys as badges of authority, while temple records detail locksmiths sworn to secrecy under penalty of mutilation. The very act of locking something away implied value, whether it was gold, grain, or sacred texts. And the Egyptians didn't stop at static pins. Archaeologists have found locks with rotating tumblers in the ruins of Karnak, proving they experimented with variations we'd recognize as combination locks or even early master key systems. The real mystery isn't how these locks worked, but why other civilizations took so long to adopt them. The Greeks and Romans relied on simpler, less secure mechanisms like slip knots and sliding bolts, leaving their treasures vulnerable. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that the West rediscovered the pin tumbler design, thanks to archaeologists unearthing Egyptian models and engineers like Linus Yale adapting them for mass production. Even now, the Yale lock on your front door owes its DNA to those Nile Valley artisans who first realized that security isn't about brute strength, but clever geometry. Perhaps the lesson here is that the best inventions aren't always the flashiest, they're the ones that solve a problem so perfectly, they become invisible. In a world of retinal scanners and smart locks, the humble pin tumbler endures, a 4,000-year-old whisper that sometimes the ancients really did know best. After all, if a design can protect a pharaoh's gold and your bicycle with equal ease, maybe it's not just a lock, it's a key to understanding timeless ingenuity. High in the thin air of the Andes, where nighttime temperatures plunge below freezing and the sun blazes with relentless intensity, Inca farmers performed what seemed like culinary magic. They transformed humble potatoes into lightweight, shelf-stable superfoods through a process so effective it could last decades, freeze-drying, centuries before modern science gave it a name. The secret lay in the mountains themselves. Families spread potatoes across frosty terraces, letting the cold snap freeze them solid. As dawn broke, they trampled the tubers to squeeze out moisture, then left them under the fierce daytime sun to dry. Repeat this cycle for several days, and what remained was chuño, a potato so preserved it could feed armies during lean seasons or fuel long-distance trade across the empire. This wasn't just passive preservation, it was precision engineering using nature's extremes. The freeze-thaw cycles broke down cell structures, removing up to 80% of the potato's water content while retaining nutrients. The result, a foodstuff that weighed a fraction of its original mass, resisted spoilage indefinitely, and could be rehydrated into soups or ground into flour. Chuño became the backbone of Inca expansion, allowing them to stockpile provisions in mountain granaries like the famed Colca Canyon, where storehouses still dot cliffsides today. Spanish chroniclers recorded warehouses holding enough chuño to sustain entire regions through droughts, testament to a system far more sophisticated than Europe's mold-prone grain silos. But the Incas weren't alone in their ingenuity. Half a world away, the Mapuche people of Chile smoked and sun-dried seafood into charqui, while Mongol herders air-dried curds into rock-hard arul that could last for years on the steppes. The common thread, Each culture adapted preservation methods to their environment's unique rhythms, turning constraints into solutions. What's startling is how relevant these ancient techniques remain. Modern freeze-drying, used in everything from astronaut meals to instant coffee, operates on the same basic principles as chunyo, just with industrial vacuum chambers instead of mountain air. Yet contemporary methods often require massive energy inputs, whereas the Inca approach was carbon neutral and decentralized. As climate change threatens global food security, researchers are revisiting these time-tested strategies. Projects in Peru now teach highland communities to revive chunyo production, not as a relic but as a resilience tool. Meanwhile, labs study how traditional drying alters food chemistry, hoping to replicate its benefits without the need for alpine conditions. This raises a provocative question. How many other forgotten preservation methods could address today's challenges? The Norse buried butter in bogs for fermentation, creating a long-lasting spread rich in probiotics. Japanese fisherfolk perfected katsuobushi, shaving rock-hard fermented tuna into umami-rich flakes that keep indefinitely. Even Egypt's honey-preserved fruits demonstrate how natural antimicrobials can replace synthetic additives. Perhaps the real lesson isn't just about food, but about perspective. Where we see scarcity, ancient innovators saw abundance if you knew how to work with the elements rather than against them. In a world racing to develop high-tech solutions to hunger and waste, the quiet wisdom of chunyo whispers an alternative. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't in a lab, but in the land itself, waiting for us to remember what our ancestors knew all along. Buried in the ruins of Pompeii, tucked inside the charred remains of a Roman physician's home, archaeologists unearthed a collection of tools so precise they could have been lifted from a modern operating room. Scalpels with razor-sharp steel blades, delicate bone drills resembling today's dental burrs, and even early versions of speculum's instruments that would remain virtually unchanged for millennia. These weren't crude implements hacked together from bronze and hope. They were masterpieces of medical engineering, designed with an understanding of anatomy and precision that rivals contemporary surgery. The real shocker, Roman surgeons weren't just extracting teeth or stitching wounds, they were performing cataract removals, bladder stone extractions, and even early forms of brain surgery. How did they achieve such feats without microscopes, anesthesia, or even basic germ theory? Part of the answer lies in their obsessive attention to material science. Roman medical steel, forged from high-carbon alloys, held an edge so fine that modern metallurgists found it comparable to 19th-century surgical steel. Handles were crafted from boxwood or ivory, materials resistant to bacterial growth and accidental sanitation breakthrough, but the true genius was in their adaptability. Take the bone drill or trepan. Its interchangeable heads and spiked guards prevented over-penetration, a safeguard some modern power drills still struggle with. Even their forceps featured ratcheted handles, allowing surgeons to lock them in place mid-procedure, freeing both hands for delicate work. Yet the tools were only half the story. Roman medical texts like those of Galen and Celsus reveal a sophistication that defies ancient stereotypes. They understood the importance of sterilizing instruments in boiling water or vinegar, even if they didn't grasp microbes. Herbal antiseptics like crushed garlic or wine-soaked dressings reduced infection rates, while opium-laced sponges served as primitive anesthesia. Cataract surgery, one of their most astounding procedures, involved inserting a needle behind the cornea to manually depress the cloudy lens, a technique so effective that variations persisted into the 20th century. What's often overlooked is the cultural context that enabled such innovation. Rome's military conquests created a constant influx of battlefield injuries, forcing rapid medical advancement. Army surgeons became expert at amputations and wound closure, their knowledge later applied to civilian practice. The Romans also embraced medical diversity, borrowing techniques from Greek, Egyptian, and Persian traditions. A 1st century CE tomb in France even yielded a prosthetic leg made of wood and bronze, complete with articulated joints, proof that rehabilitation wasn't an afterthought. The tragedy isn't that these techniques disappeared entirely, it's how much knowledge slipped through history's cracks. Medieval Europe dismissed Roman surgical practices as pagan excess, regressing to crude procedures for centuries. It wasn't until the Renaissance that scholars rediscovered texts like Celsus's De Medicina, sparking a medical revolution. Today, archaeologists still uncover Roman tools with wear patterns suggesting decades of use, a testament to their durability and the skill of those who wielded them. Perhaps the most humbling lesson lies in the scalpel's edge, the realization that innovation isn't always about discovering something new, but preserving what already works. The next time a surgeon reaches for a retractor or forceps, they're not just holding a tool, they're gripping a thread that stretches back to those Pompeian workshops, where ancient healers proved that precision and compassion could flourish even in the shadow of volcanoes. After all, if a civilization without germ theory could design instruments that still inspire awe, what does that say about the timeless nature of human ingenuity? In the shadow of Mesopotamian ziggurats, where the first cities of humankind rose from the mud, priestesses in flowing robes stirred clay vats of bubbling liquid, not for ritual but for survival. This wasn't mere water, it was beer, thick as porridge and twice as nourishing, a sacred alchemy of fermented grains that may have planted the seeds of civilization itself. The world's oldest known recipe, etched into a 4,000-year-old cuneiform tablet, reveals a truth that rewrites history. Beer wasn't just a byproduct of agriculture, it might have been the reason farming began at all. The process was deceptively simple. Priestesses of the temple goddess Ninkasi, literally translated as Lady of the Intoxicating Fruit, mashed barley and emmer wheat into a sweet paste, then left it to ferment in large jars with dates and honey for natural sweetness. But this wasn't the crisp, golden drink we know today. Ancient beer was cloudy, nutrient-dense, and sipped through straws to avoid floating grain husks. It served as both meal and medicine, packed with vitamins and probiotics that made it safer to drink than contaminated river water. Workers building the great ziggurats of received daily beer rations, a calorie-rich payment that fueled the world's first urban labor force. What's startling is how deeply beer was woven into the fabric of early society. Those temple breweries doubled as accounting houses, where transactions were recorded on clay tablets alongside recipes. The Hymn to Ninkasi, a sacred text from 1800 BCE, doubles as step-by-step brewing instructions, a mnemonic device ensuring the knowledge passed flawlessly through generations. Beer even played judge in legal disputes. Babylonian courts often required parties to drink a ceremonial brew, believing intoxication would force the guilty to confess. But the real revolution lay in beer's unintended consequences. To brew consistently, Mesopotamians needed stable grain supplies, which meant planting crops deliberately rather than foraging wild stands. This demand for barley and wheat may have been the push that transformed nomadic tribes into settled farmers, kickstarting the agricultural revolution. Archaeologists have found evidence of brewing residues in pottery shards predating bread by centuries, suggesting thirst preceded hunger as a motivator for domestication. The echoes of this ancient innovation are everywhere, from Egyptian hieroglyphs depicting brewery workers to Viking feasts where mead sealed treaties. fermented drinks became the glue of social cohesion. Modern beer's hoppy bite is a far cry from Mesopotamia's honeyed brew, but the essence remains a shared cup still bridges divides, celebrates milestones, and fuels creativity. Perhaps the priestesses of Ninkasi knew this all along, that sometimes the most profound inventions aren't tools or weapons, but the rituals that remind us what it means to be human. After all, if a humble grain soup could build cities and shape economies, what does that say about the power of raising a glass together? While Zhang Heng's earthquake-detecting dragon vessel rightfully captures headlines, his other seismic marvel, the bronze-toed seismoscope, remains one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. Picture a circular bronze urn adorned with 8 sculpted toads, each poised with mouths gaping toward the 8 cardinal directions. At the center, a delicately balanced pillar held a bronze ball, ready to roll into a toad's mouth at the slightest tremor. Unlike modern seismographs that merely record vibrations, this second-century device didn't just sense quakes, it pointed toward their epicenters with uncanny precision. The genius of this design wasn't just in its theatricality, but in its mechanics. Scholars still debate whether the urn contained a pendulum or liquid mercury to trigger the ball's release, but the result was undeniable. When an earthquake struck Loyang in 138 CE, the westward-facing toad caught the ball, proving the device's accuracy days before messengers arrived with news of devastation in that direction. What's often overlooked is how this invention transcended mere detection. It was an early warning system, allowing officials to direct aid and reinforcements toward affected regions before full reports could arrive. In an era when disasters were often blamed on divine wrath, Zhang Heng's seismoscope offered something radical, the power of anticipation. Yet Zhang Heng wasn't alone in his quest to tame nature's fury. Across the ancient world, civilizations engineered safeguards that wouldn't be rivaled for centuries. The Indus Valley cities built drainage systems with gradient slopes so precise they prevented flooding millennia before modern civil engineering. Minoan architects on Crete installed lightweight, earthquake-resistant timber frames within stone walls, a technique Japan wouldn't rediscover until the 14th century. Even the Romans, notorious for their brutalist concrete, mixed hollow volcanic rock into dome constructions to reduce weight and seismic vulnerability, a principle mirrored in today's skyscraper designs. Perhaps most striking are the parallels between ancient and modern disaster psychology. Just as contemporary Japan holds annual earthquake drills rooted in centuries of seismic experience, the Maya held rituals to appease Chok, the rain god, while simultaneously constructing vast reservoir systems like Kohl's intricately plastered cisterns. These weren't just spiritual gestures, they were community-based risk management, blending belief with pragmatic preparation. The real lesson of Zhang Heng's toads isn't just about lost technology, it's about the timeless human impulse to outthink chaos. From Byzantine ships carrying fire-quenching vinegar pumps to ink and suspension bridges woven from iku grass to flex with tremors, ancient innovators proved that safety isn't a modern obsession, but a perennial challenge met with creativity. As climate change amplifies natural threats today, their solutions whisper a provocative question: have we really advanced or simply forgotten how to listen to the past? Imagine setting sail across thousands of miles of open ocean with no compass, no stars to guide you, just the feel of waves beneath your canoe and a tangled web of sticks in your hands. This was the reality for Polynesian voyagers, whose intricate stick charts encoded the Pacific's secrets in a language of wood and shells. These weren't maps in the conventional sense, but three-dimensional puzzles that taught navigators to read the ocean's subtle whispers, the way currents bent around distant islands, the rebound patterns of swells colliding with unseen reefs, even the flight paths of homing birds. To modern eyes, they look like abstract art, but to a trained wayfinder, they were the GPS of the ancient world, a tactile library of the sea. The genius of these charts lay in their flexibility. Made from palm ribs lashed together with coconut fiber, each intersection and curve represented specific wave interactions. Cowrie shells marked islands, while curved sticks mimicked the refraction of swells around land masses. But here's what's truly astonishing. The charts weren't carried on voyages. Navigators memorized them, internalizing the patterns until they could feel shifts in the ocean's rhythm through their hull. A slight change in wave frequency might signal an atoll over the horizon. A sudden slackening of currents could warn of drifting off course. This was navigation by kinesthetic intelligence, a skill honed over years of apprenticeship under master wayfinders. What's often overlooked is the sheer scale of their achievements. Using these methods, Polynesians settled islands from Hawaii to New Zealand to Rapa Nui, a maritime empire spanning 10 million square miles, all without writing or metal tools. Their voyages weren't accidental drifts but deliberate expeditions, with double-hulled canoes carrying families, livestock, and seedlings for colonization. European explorers like Cook marveled at their precision, noting how Polynesian guides could pinpoint minuscule atolls after weeks at sea, a feat their own navigators with sextants and chronometers struggled to match. Yet the stick charts reveal something deeper, a worldview where nature wasn't conquered but conversed with. Where Western maps impose grids on the world, Polynesian charts flowed with it, acknowledging the ocean as a living, shifting entity. Modern oceanography confirms their accuracy. Satellite data shows how swell patterns around the Marshall Islands align perfectly with surviving charts. Even their ETAC system dividing voyages into conceptual segments using moving reference points mirrors today's dynamic positioning tech. This raises a sobering question: how much ecological wisdom has vanished with the languages and elders who held it? Stick charts were just one thread in a vast tapestry of indigenous knowledge, from Inuit snow depth readings predicting seal movements to Aboriginal songlines encoding desert water sources. As climate change reshapes our planet, these time-tested adaptations may hold keys to resilience we've barely begun to unpack. Perhaps the greatest lesson isn't about navigation at all, but about humility. In an age of satellite precision, we've lost the art of reading the world directly, the way a Polynesian navigator senses land in the taste of seaweed or the angle of dawn light on clouds. The stick charts whisper a challenge. True mastery isn't in overriding nature's signals, but in learning to listen. After all, if a bundle of sticks could guide a civilization across an ocean, what other ancient wisdoms might be waiting to steer us through the storms ahead? Beneath the marble floors of the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, a hidden network of clay pipes hummed with innovation, an ancient masterpiece of comfort that wouldn't be rivaled until the Industrial Revolution. While we credit modern engineers with central heating, the Greeks had already perfected it by the 4th century BCE. Their system, called a hypocaust, pumped hot air from wood-fired furnaces through hollow spaces beneath temple floors and behind walls, radiating warmth so evenly that even the grandest halls stayed cozy in winter. But this wasn't just a luxury for the elite. From Britain to Syria, Roman bathhouses and villas adopted the technology, proving that climate control could be democratic. The real marvel wasn't just the heat, it was the engineering. Floors rested on stacks of terracotta pillars, creating cavities for air to circulate while preventing tiles from cracking under thermal expansion. Some villas even had adjustable vents to regulate temperature room by room, an ancient thermostat. Yet for all its sophistication, the hypocaust vanished with the fall of Rome, leaving Europe to shiver through the Dark Ages. Why? The answer lies in the fragility of complex systems. Hypocausts required armies of slaves to feed furnaces, skilled masons to maintain delicate tile work, and a centralized economy to fund their construction. As empires crumbled, so did the infrastructure supporting them. Medieval Europe, fractured and resource-scarce, reverted to simpler hearths and smoky open fires. Even when wealth returned, the knowledge didn't. Charlemagne's palace at Aachen attempted a hypocaust revival, but the technique had degraded into crude imitations that leaked more smoke than heat. What's often overlooked is how this technology reflected societal values. Roman bathhouses weren't just about cleanliness. They were social equalizers where senators and slaves soaked side by side, all warmed by the same invisible hand of engineering. The hypocaust's decline mirrored a retreat from public life into private fortresses, where towering stone castles prioritized defense over comfort. By the time Renaissance scholars rediscovered Roman engineering manuals, Europe was already pivoting toward chimney flues and coal stoves, technologies better suited to crowded cities than sprawling villas. But the story doesn't end there. Modern archaeologists studying Ephesus found something astonishing. Sections of the hypocaust still intact after 2 millennia, their clay pipes uncracked by time. Today's radiant floor heating, used in everything from eco-homes to luxury spas, operates on nearly identical principles, just with electric coils or water pipes replacing those ancient air channels. The real lesson isn't about lost technology, but about how easily progress can unravel when knowledge isn't shared. The Greeks and Romans proved that comfort and ingenuity could go hand in hand, if only we'd remembered to keep the fires burning. In the scorching deserts of Rajasthan, where temperatures soar high enough to crack stone, the solution to water scarcity wasn't just functional, it was a work of art. Stepwells, those breathtaking subterranean temples of water, transformed the act of survival into something sacred. These weren't mere reservoirs, they were inverted palaces, their walls carved with deities and geometric patterns, descending deep into the earth like staircases to another world. The Chand Bayori, with its 3,500 perfectly symmetrical steps, isn't just an engineering marvel, it's a masterpiece of climate control, where each tier funnels cool air upward while shielding precious water from the relentless sun. The genius of stepwells lies in their dual purpose. Unlike conventional wells which lose water to evaporation, these structures burrowed below the water table, their shaded steps minimizing exposure to heat. The deeper one descended, the cooler the air became a natural oasis in a land where shade was as precious as the water itself. Communities didn't just come here to draw water, they gathered in the cavernous lower chambers to escape midday heat, turning necessity into social ritual. Some stepwells, like Gujarat's Rani Kai Vav, doubled as subterranean temples, their walls adorned with hundreds of sculptures depicting gods and mythological scenes. Water wasn't just a resource, it was a divine gift, honored through art and architecture. What's staggering is the foresight behind their construction. Built between the 8th and 19th centuries, stepwells were designed to withstand both drought and deluge. Their tiered structure allowed them to adapt to fluctuating water levels, while intricate filtration systems, layers of sand and charcoal, purified runoff before it reached the main reservoir. In a region where monsoons were erratic, these structures functioned as underground insurance policies, storing enough water to last entire cities through years of scarcity. Yet the real lesson isn't just about ancient ingenuity, it's about what we've forgotten. Modern India, plagued by groundwater depletion, is now reviving these relics as sustainable alternatives to energy-guzzling pumps. Architects study their passive cooling techniques, While hydrologists marvel at their efficiency, some stepwells lost only 2% of their water annually to evaporation, compared to 40% in modern, open-air reservoirs. Even their communal design holds wisdom. By making water collection a shared social activity, they fostered conservation in ways that isolated taps never could. The tragedy: thousands of stepwells lie buried under neglect or urban sprawl, their pumps silenced by the very technologies meant to replace them. But in places like Delhi's Agresankai Bayoli, restoration projects reveal their untapped potential. During recent droughts, communities rediscovered that these ancient wells still hold water, and not just the liquid kind, but the cultural memory of how to live in harmony with a parched landscape. Perhaps the answer to tomorrow's water crises doesn't lie in drilling deeper or building bigger, but in looking down into the cool, shaded depths of what our ancestors already knew. After all, if a civilization could carve resilience into stone centuries ago, what's stopping us from learning from their blueprints? Stretching across mountains, swamps, and deserts like stone arteries, Roman roads weren't just paths, they were the lifelines of an empire. Imagine a highway system so meticulously engineered that sections still support truck traffic 2,000 years later. The secret: a layered construction method so advanced that modern civil engineers refer to it as the Roman sandwich. At the base, a trench packed with crushed stone prevented shifting. Above it, alternating layers of gravel, sand, and mortar created a flexible yet stable foundation, topped with interlocking volcanic rock slabs cambered slightly to shed rainwater into drainage ditches. These weren't just durable, they were self-maintaining, but the brilliance extended beyond materials. Roman surveyors used a tool called a groma to plot straight lines across impossible terrain, tunneling through hills and elevating roads over marshes with timber pilings. Their crowning achievement: the clausum, a surveyed right-of-way stretching 30 feet wide, flanked by pedestrian walkways and mile markers carved with distances to the nearest town. Couriers could gallop from Rome to Brundisium in just 7 days, relaying messages at speeds unmatched until the 19th century. What's often overlooked is how these roads functioned as stealth technology for conquest. Unlike dirt tracks that turned to mud with rain, Roman highways allowed legions to march 25 miles daily in any weather, projecting power faster than rivals could organize defenses. Yet their true legacy was economic. By standardizing widths to accommodate 2 carts passing 4.8 feet, a measurement still influencing modern lanes, they created the ancient equivalent of a free trade zone. Olive oil from Hispania, silk from China, and amber from the Baltic flowed along these routes, knitting 3 continents into history's first globalized marketplace. The eerie part: we're still following their playbook. The Autobahn's drainage systems mirror Roman designs, while modern asphalt's aggregate layers are direct descendants of their strata. Even the word highway traces back to the Latin via alta, meaning highway, a nod to their elevated construction. Yet for all we've replicated, we've lost some wisdom. Roman roads lasted centuries because they adapted to local conditions, using volcanic tuff in Italy, flint in Britain, while today's cookie-cutter asphalt often fails within decades. Perhaps the ultimate testament lies beneath your feet. Next time you're stuck in traffic, consider this: you might be rolling over the same stones that once carried Caesar's chariots. That's not just engineering, it's time travel paved in stone. High in the Andes, where thin air and rugged terrain made every injury potentially fatal, ancient Peruvian healers performed a surgery so precise it defies expectations, drilling holes directly into living skulls. This practice, called trepanation, wasn't some crude ritual but a sophisticated medical intervention with survival rates that would impress modern surgeons. Archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of trepan skulls, some showing clear signs of healing, proof that patients not only survived the ordeal but lived for years afterward. One remarkable specimen from the Inca period even displays 5 separate trepanations, each carefully spaced to avoid previous openings, suggesting a level of anatomical familiarity and post-operative care that rewrites our understanding of pre-Columbian medicine. The tools themselves were deceptively simple: obsidian blades sharper than today's surgical steel, bronze tumis for cutting, and hand-operated drills made of copper or bone. But the real mastery lay in technique. Healers avoided critical areas like the sagittal sinus, where bleeding could be fatal, instead targeting safer zones near the forehead or parietal bones. Some skulls reveal concentric grooves where surgeons gradually deepened the hole, minimizing trauma, a method eerily similar to modern craniotomies. Even more astonishing, they used natural antiseptics like coca leaves or fermented chicha to prevent infection, while plant-based poultices likely reduced swelling and pain. What drove these surgeries? Trauma was one factor. Many skulls show fractures from slings or clubs, and trepanation may have relieved pressure from swelling. But some cases hint at deeper medical reasoning. A few skulls exhibit no visible injury, suggesting ancient healers might have treated chronic conditions like epilepsy or migraines, possibly believing they were releasing evil spirits. Yet the precision of their work implies more than superstition. These were careful observers of human anatomy, likely passing down knowledge through generations. The most humbling discovery: their success rates. Studies of Peruvian trepanations show up to 80% survival in some regions, a staggering figure considering the era's limitations. Compare that to the American Civil War, where cranial surgeries had a 50% mortality rate even with anesthesia and sterilization. How did they achieve this? Part of the answer lies in their patient selection, avoiding high-risk cases, but also in their empirical approach. Over centuries, they refined their methods through trial and observation, creating what amounts to the world's first neurosurgical protocol. Today, neuroscientists study these ancient skulls to understand how the brain heals after trauma. Some trepanation sites show bone regrowth patterns that suggest the brain's plasticity helped compensate for the openings. Even the mistakes are instructive. A few skulls display botched attempts where the surgeon went too deep, leaving behind cautionary tales etched in bone. The real lesson of trepanation isn't just about medical skill, it's about resilience. In a world without imaging or antibiotics, these healers developed a life-saving practice through sheer observation and innovation. Their legacy lingers in modern medicine, where the same principles of precision and restraint still guide brain surgery. So the next time you marvel at a high-tech operating room, remember, the foundation of neurosurgery wasn't laid in a sterile lab, but on the sun-baked slopes of the Andes, where ancient doctors dared to drill into the unknown and often succeeded. Long before sailors relied on stars to chart their course, Chinese diviners in the Han Dynasty crouched over polished bronze plates, carefully arranging spoon-shaped lodestones to commune with the heavens. These south-pointing fish, as they were called, weren't navigation tools. They were mystical instruments for aligning buildings with cosmic energy and predicting the future. The lodestone's strange attraction to the north was seen as a spiritual force, a whisper from the universe itself. Yet within centuries, this sacred object would pivot from occult ritual to global revolution, proving that sometimes the most world-changing inventions begin as something entirely different. The transition from divination to navigation wasn't accidental. By the 1st century BCE, Chinese scholars noticed something curious. The lodestone's alignment remained constant, regardless of season or time of day. This revelation transformed it from a fortune-telling curio into a scientific instrument. The earliest navigational compasses, called sinan, appeared during the Song dynasty, lodestones mounted on wooden floats in bowls of water, their unwavering northward pull guiding ships through fog and storms. Suddenly, maritime trade exploded. Chinese junks laden with silk and porcelain could venture farther than ever, while naval commanders gained tactical advantages in battle, maneuvering fleets with precision that left land-bound rivals bewildered. What's often overlooked is how this shift mirrors the arc of countless innovations. Like the compass, many breakthroughs begin cloaked in mysticism before shedding their ceremonial trappings. Egyptian alchemists seeking immortality stumbled upon glassmaking. Medieval apothecaries mixing love potions laid the groundwork for modern chemistry. Even Newton, the father of physics, spent years decoding biblical prophecies. The compass's journey reminds us that science and spirituality haven't always been opposites. Sometimes they're collaborators, with one paving the way for the other. But the compass's true legacy lies in its ripple effects. Arab traders adopted it by the 13th century, passing it to European navigators who'd later use it to cross oceans and redraw world maps. Without it, Columbus might have veered hopelessly off course. Magellan's crew could have starved in the doldrums. Yet for all its global impact, the compass never fully abandoned its roots. Traditional Chinese geomancy, or feng shui, still employs lodestones to harmonize spaces, a poetic full circle where ancient intuition and modern science coexist. Perhaps the lesson isn't just about navigation, but about how humanity repurposes discovery. An invention's first use is rarely its most transformative. It's the unexpected second acts, the sideways leaps, that truly change history. The next time you check your phone's GPS, remember, the technology guiding you began as a bronze spoon trembling toward the unknown, proof that even our oldest tools still have new directions to point us. Buried in the sands near Luxor, archaeologists uncovered something that would rewrite medical history: a wooden toe, meticulously carved and strapped to the foot of an Egyptian noblewoman who lived 3,000 years ago. At first glance, it might seem like a simple artifact, but this wasn't just a cosmetic cover-up. The so-called Cairo toe, crafted from leather and wood with intricate hinges, shows unmistakable signs of wear, proving its owner didn't just wear it for show. She walked, worked, and lived with it. The toe's curvature even matches natural foot anatomy, with a beveled edge to reduce pressure on the remaining limb, a detail so advanced it rivals modern prosthetic design. What makes this discovery revolutionary isn't just its age, it's the philosophy behind it. Ancient Egyptian medicine didn't view prosthetics as mere replacements. They were extensions of the body, designed with an almost spiritual attention to function. Papyrus records describe physicians' custom-fitting devices based on patients' gaits, sometimes using molds of residual limbs to ensure perfect alignment. The Cairo toe's leather straps weren't just functional, they were padded to prevent chafing, a comfort feature many contemporary prosthetics overlook. This level of personalization suggests an understanding of biomechanics that wouldn't resurface in Western medicine until the 19th century. But the Egyptians weren't alone in their innovations. Half a world away, Roman soldiers who lost limbs in battle were fitted with iron hands or peg legs, some even sporting crude but functional hooks for gripping shields. A recently unearthed prosthetic leg from Capua, made of bronze and wood, featured a locking mechanism to stabilize the knee, an engineering feat that allowed its wearer to march alongside his legion. Yet none matched the Egyptians' holistic approach. Their prosthetics often bore inscriptions invoking gods like Thoth for healing, blending practicality with ritual. A prosthetic finger found on a mummy near Thebes still bears traces of resin, likely both an adhesive and a sacred offering to ensure its efficacy in the afterlife. The real question isn't how they built these devices, it's why they bothered at all. In societies where disability could mean social exclusion, the existence of such prosthetics hints at a surprising inclusivity. Tomb paintings show amputees dancing, farming, and even serving in royal courts, their devices visible but unremarkable. This challenges the stereotype of ancient cultures as ruthlessly survivalist. For the Egyptians, medicine wasn't just about survival, it was about dignity. A noblewoman's carved toe or a scribe's replacement finger wasn't just a tool, it was a statement that the body, however altered, could still be whole. Modern prosthetics with their carbon fiber and microprocessors might seem light years ahead, but the core philosophy remains unchanged. The Cairo toes maker understood something we're only now rediscovering, that the BEST Chinese letter devices don't just restore function, they honor the person using them. Perhaps that's the most enduring lesson from these ancient craftsmen. In a world obsessed with technological leaps, their greatest innovation wasn't the toe itself, but the idea that care could be as personalized as the body it served. After all, if a civilization without X-rays or antibiotics could tailor prosthetics to individual lives, what does that say about the timeless human commitment to healing, not just the body but the spirit within it? Buried in the ruins of ancient Babylon, a 4,800-year-old clay tablet holds a recipe so ordinary yet revolutionary that it quietly shaped the course of human health. Written in meticulous cuneiform, it describes a process familiar to any modern chemist, mixing animal fats with wood ash to create soap. This wasn't just a cosmetic luxury, it was a survival tool in the world's first crowded cities, where epidemics thrived in narrow streets and bustling markets. The Mesopotamians didn't just invent soap, they engineered the earliest known system of public hygiene, turning a simple chemical reaction into a shield against invisible killers. The brilliance of their formula lay in its elegant chemistry. When fats mingle with alkaline ash, a process called saponification occurs, breaking down grime and microbes at a molecular level. But here's what's truly remarkable: they didn't stop at basic bars. Excavations at Sumerian sites reveal specialized soaps, some infused with fragrant herbs like thyme for antiseptic properties, others blended with sesame oil for gentler skin care. These weren't crude experiments, they were precision-crafted tools, tailored to different needs, just as modern soaps target acne, eczema, or sensitive skin. A surviving letter from a Mesopotamian merchant even complains about a shipment of inferior soap that smells of rancid goat fat, proving quality control mattered even then. What's often overlooked is how soap intertwined with daily life. Temples required worshippers to wash before entering, linking cleanliness to spirituality long before religious ablutions became widespread. Medical texts from Mari prescribe lye soap for wound care, while palace records detail soap rations for workers building ziggurats. This wasn't just personal hygiene, it was societal infrastructure, as vital as granaries or city walls. In a world where waterborne diseases could decimate populations, soap became the unsung hero of urban survival. Yet the real mystery isn't how they made soap, but why its impact faded from history's spotlight. While we celebrate inventions like the wheel or the plow, soap's role in doubling lifespans goes curiously unheralded. Perhaps because its benefits were invisible, how do you tally lives not lost to dysentery or cholera? Or maybe because its origins were too humble, emerging from laundry vats rather than royal workshops. Even the Greeks and Romans, who later perfected public baths, often credited their cleanliness to water alone, overlooking the chemical ally that made washing truly effective. Modern archaeology is finally setting the record straight. Residue analyses of Babylonian cooking pots show traces of saponified fats, suggesting households repurposed leftover grease for soap making. Cuneiform tax records list soap among traded goods, revealing an industry sophisticated enough to support specialized artisans. And recent studies of ancient teeth show lower rates of infection in Mesopotamian remains compared to contemporary rural cultures, a silent testament to soap's protective power. This raises a provocative question. What if we've been measuring ancient progress all wrong? We fixate on pyramids and conquests, but perhaps the truest mark of civilization isn't monuments, but mundanities, like a mother washing her child's hands with a palm-sized bar of ash and oil. In an era before germ theory, the Mesopotamians grasped a truth that would take millennia to scientifically prove. That survival isn't just about strength or wealth, but about the quiet rituals that keep death at bay. The next time you lather up, remember, you're not just cleansing. You're enacting a tradition as old as cities themselves, one that allowed humanity to thrive cheek by jowl without dying shoulder to shoulder. Now that's a legacy worth bubbling over about. Imagine trying to wake up for an important lecture without the blare of a digital alarm, just the steady drip of water marking the hours. In 4th century BC Athens, Plato faced this very problem. His solution, a water-powered alarm clock so ingenious it could rouse students at precise intervals, proving that punctuality wasn't invented with smartphones. This wasn't just a timer, it was a symphony of hydraulics and physics, using overflowing vessels to strike gongs or drop pebbles onto metal plates when a set amount of water had passed. The sound wasn't just a noise, it was the heartbeat of ancient discipline, structuring everything from philosophy debates to royal decrees. The mechanics were deceptively simple yet brilliantly adaptable. A main vessel filled at a constant rate, while a secondary chamber calibrated to the desired duration would tip dramatically once full, triggering the alarm. But here's where it gets fascinating. These clocks weren't one size fits all. Surviving designs show adjustable overflow holes, allowing users to set alarms for different lengths, much like programming a modern timer. Courts used them to limit speeches. Athenian lawyers knew their time was up when the water ran out, while gymnasia timed athletic training with the same precision as today's interval workouts. What's often overlooked is how these clocks transformed society's relationship with time itself. Before water clocks, the ancient world relied on sundials or the position of stars, tools useless on cloudy days or indoors. Plato's invention brought timekeeping into enclosed spaces, democratizing productivity beyond the whims of weather. The ripple effects were profound. Schools could standardize lesson lengths, markets synchronized opening hours, and even religious rituals gained temporal consistency. This wasn't just about waking up, it was about synchronizing human activity on an unprecedented scale. Yet the real marvel lies in the philosophy behind the device. Plato, who saw time as a shadow of eternal truths, engineered a clock that mirrored his worldview. Unlike modern alarms that shock us awake, water clocks worked with natural flows, a gentle yet inexorable reminder that time, like a river, waits for no one. Some scholars believe these devices even influenced his famous allegory of the cave, where dripping water symbolized the slow revelation of knowledge. The legacy of these clocks lingers in ways we rarely notice. The very word alarm comes from the Italian alarm, meaning to arms, a call to action as urgent as Plato's pebbles clattering onto bronze. And while today's atomic clocks measure nanoseconds, the principle remains unchanged. Time is power, and whoever controls its measurement shapes civilization's rhythm. Next time you hit snooze, remember, you're participating in a 4,000-year-old quest to master the one resource even emperors couldn't hoard. After all, if a trickle of water could orchestrate an empire's schedule, what does that say about our own relationship with the ticking clock? High above the roaring Apurimac River, where winds howl through narrow canyons and cliffs plunge hundreds of feet down, the Inca built bridges that defied both gravity and conventional wisdom. These weren't structures of stone or metal, but living, breathing spans woven entirely from iku grass, a humble mountain reed transformed into engineering marvels capable of supporting armies, llamas, and even Spanish conquistadors in full armor. The most famous, the Quipu Bridge, stretches over 100 feet across dizzying heights, its cables as thick as a man's torso, yet it flexes and sways with the wind like a giant suspended hammock. What makes these bridges extraordinary isn't just their strength, but their resilience. Each strand, meticulously braided by hand, could withstand forces that would snap modern steel cables under tension. The secret lay in the Incas' deep understanding of material science. They didn't just harvest iku grass, they selected specific high-altitude varieties with naturally high silica content, making the fibers resistant to weathering and decay. Villagers twisted the grass into slender cords, then braided those into thicker ropes, and finally wound multiple ropes together into the massive cables that formed the bridge's backbone. This hierarchical structure, reminiscent of modern carbon fiber composites, distributed stress evenly across thousands of individual fibers. When one strand failed, the load transferred seamlessly to others, preventing catastrophic collapse. The deck, made of woven matting, acted like a shock absorber, dissipating energy from wind and foot traffic. But the real innovation wasn't in the construction, it was in the maintenance. Every year, communities from 4 nearby villages gathered for a 3-day festival of renewal, dismantling the old bridge and weaving a new one in its place. This wasn't just practical upkeep, it was a sacred ritual, a tangible bond between people, technology, and landscape. Children learned rope making from elders, techniques passed down through generations unchanged. The work was accompanied by songs, offerings to Pachamama, Earth Mother, and communal feasts, a stark contrast to today's impersonal infrastructure projects managed by anonymous contractors. What's astonishing is how these ancient principles hold up under modern scrutiny. When engineers modeled the Quipu's design using computer simulations, they found the grass cables could support greater dynamic loads than steel in certain conditions. The bridge's flexibility allowed it to withstand earthquakes that would topple rigid structures, while its lightweight design imposed minimal stress on the canyon walls. Even the annual rebuilding, once dismissed as primitive, proved visionary. By constantly renewing the materials, the Incas avoided the fatigue failures that plague modern bridges. This raises a profound question. Have we sacrificed durability for permanence? Contemporary bridges, built to last decades without maintenance, often fail spectacularly when finally pushed beyond their limits. The Inca approach embraced impermanence as a strength. Their bridges weren't meant to endure untouched, but to evolve through collective care. In an age of crumbling infrastructure and deferred repairs, there's wisdom in their model. Some forward-thinking engineers now advocate for living bridges inspired by Andean principles, using synthetic fibers designed for easy replacement and community monitoring systems. Perhaps the most enduring lesson isn't about grass or load capacities, but about the relationship between technology and society. The Inca didn't separate their bridges from the people who used them. The structures were physical manifestations of social contracts, as much about connecting communities as crossing chasms. When the last grass bridge keeper passes on his knowledge to a new generation this year, he's not just preserving history, he's upholding a 400-year-old conversation between human ingenuity and the natural world, one that still has much to teach us about building not just for strength, but for belonging. While medieval European farmers scattered seeds by hand, wasting precious grain to birds and uneven growth, Chinese fields thrived under the careful precision of a machine centuries ahead of its time. The seed drill, pulled by horses or oxen, wasn't just a tool, it was an agricultural revolution on wheels. Picture a wooden cart with hollow tubes extending downward, each one dropping seeds into perfectly spaced furrows at a consistent depth. No more clumped sprouts fighting for sunlight, no more barren patches where seeds washed away. This ingenious device, appearing as early as the Han Dynasty around 2,000 years ago, could triple crop yields while using far less seed, a breakthrough that should have rewritten farming across the globe. Yet astonishingly, Europe wouldn't adopt similar technology until the 18th century, when Englishman Jethro Tull famously reinvented it. Why did something so transformative take millennia to cross continents? The answer lies in more than just geography. China's seed drill succeeded because it was part of an integrated system. Iron plows, developed concurrently, cut deeper furrows to accommodate the drill's precision planting. Advanced harrows smoothed the soil afterward, protecting buried seeds. This wasn't a standalone invention, but a symbiotic network of agrarian tech, each piece reinforcing the others. Contrast this with Europe's fragmented feudal estates, where land was divided into narrow strips and farmers lacked incentives or resources to experiment. Without the right plows or field layouts, a seed drill would have been useless, but the deeper mystery isn't just about tools, it's about knowledge itself. Chinese agricultural manuals, like Jia Sixi's 6th century Essential Techniques for the Welfare of the People, detailed seed drills alongside crop rotation and soil management, creating a shared playbook for prosperity. These texts circulated among literate officials who saw farming as a science, not just labor. Europe, meanwhile, relied on oral traditions and monastic scribes who rarely dirtied their hands in fields. The difference wasn't intelligence but infrastructure. China's centralized bureaucracy actively disseminated innovations, while Europe's patchwork of kingdoms had no system for spreading peasant ingenuity. Perhaps the most revealing clue comes from an unexpected source: warfare. Chinese seed drills were often pulled by horses, animals bred in vast numbers for cavalry. Europe's chronic wars, by contrast, prioritized war horses over farm animals, leaving peasants to rely on slower oxen ill-suited for precision drills. Even the humble seed tube reflects cultural priorities. Chinese versions were standardized using state-mandated measurements, while Europe's irregular local units would have made replicating the technology a nightmare. The real lesson here isn't about seeds, it's about ecosystems of innovation. A brilliant device means nothing without the right soil, animals, measurements, and minds to nurture it. Today, as we struggle with divides between high-tech labs and smallholder farms, the seed drill whispers a timeless truth. Progress isn't just about inventing. It's about connecting. Walk the dusty streets of Pompeii on any given morning 2,000 years ago, and the aromas would feel strangely familiar: sizzling meats, simmering stews, the tang of fermented fish sauce wafting from storefront counters. These weren't high-end restaurants but thermopolia, the Roman Empire's answer to fast food, where workers on the go could grab a hot meal without missing a beat in their busy day. Picture a stone counter embedded with clay pots called dolia, each one kept piping hot by charcoal furnaces beneath, an ancient version of today's steam tables. This wasn't just convenience, it was a culinary revolution that fed an entire urban ecosystem, proving that street food culture is anything but modern. What made these thermopolia so revolutionary was their efficiency. Excavations reveal menus painted right on the walls: lentil stews, spiced wines, even something resembling an early form of lasagna. Cooks prepared massive batches in back kitchens, then transferred them to the heated countertop pots, ensuring quick service during the midday rush. The dolia weren't just passive containers. Their thick walls retained heat for hours, much like modern crockpots. And just like today's food trucks, location was everything. Thermopolia clustered near theaters, baths, and ports, catering to everyone from dockworkers to wealthy merchants craving a quick bite between meetings. But here's what's truly fascinating: their role in social mobility. Unlike formal dining rooms reserved for the elite, thermopolia were democratic spaces. A laborer could stand shoulder to shoulder with a minor official, both dipping bread into the same garlicky fish broth. Archaeologists have even found traces of affordable yet nutritious meals, porridges enriched with chickpeas and goat meat, suggesting these spots provided balanced diets for lower-income citizens. In a city where many homes lacked proper kitchens, thermopolia weren't just convenient, they were essential infrastructure, the ancient equivalent of meal prep for the masses. The parallels to modern life are uncanny. Just as office workers today grab salads from refrigerated displays, Pompeians relied on standardized portion sizes. Terracotta bowls called paetuli held single servings of stew, while flasks known as gutti dispensed precise amounts of wine. Some thermopolia even had loyalty systems, with regulars getting discounts scrawled on pottery shards. And much like contemporary health inspectors, Roman officials monitored food safety, fining vendors who diluted wine or sold spoiled meat. Yet for all their sophistication, thermopolia met a grim fate. The ash layers of Vesuvius preserved them mid-service. One counter still holds a carbonized stew, its ingredients identifiable after 2 millennia. But their legacy lives on. Next time you swipe your card at a Subway sandwich kiosk or tap an app for instant delivery, remember, you're participating in a tradition as old as urbanization itself. The Romans didn't just invent roads and aqueducts, they engineered solutions for the most human of needs, feeding a city on the move, one hot meal at a time. In the scorching deserts of ancient Persia, where summer temperatures could melt stone, engineers built towering domes that defied logic, structures capable of preserving ice through the blistering heat without a single watt of electricity. These yachtals, or ice pits, weren't just clever storage solutions. They were masterclasses in thermodynamics, combining architecture, material science, and environmental intuition to create what might be history's most sustainable refrigeration. Picture a massive conical dome rising from the sand, its thick mud brick walls laced with insulating materials like sand, clay, and even goat hair. Below ground, deep chambers held winter ice harvested from nearby mountains or frozen pools, while above, windcatchers funneled cool night air downward, creating a natural convection current that maintained near freezing temperatures even as the desert sun baked the exterior. The secret to their efficiency lay in their layered design. The yachtals' walls, sometimes reaching 2 meters thick, contained a revolutionary mixture called sarouge, a mortar of clay, lime, ash, and egg whites that hardened into a near-waterproof barrier, resisting heat transfer like ancient polystyrene. Underground, Qanat's subterranean aqueducts channeled water to the base of the structure, where nightly evaporation further cooled the interior. During winter, laborers poured water into shallow pools, letting it freeze overnight in thin layers that were then chipped off and packed into the yachtal's belly alongside insulating straw. By summer, the ice could last for months, supplying royalty with chilled sherbets and hospitals with cold compresses, luxuries Europe wouldn't enjoy until the 1800s. But the real marvel wasn't just the ice itself, it was the system's zero-energy ethos. Unlike modern refrigerators that guzzle power, yachtals worked with their environment rather than against it. Windcatchers harnessed desert breezes for ventilation, while the dome's shape minimized surface area exposed to the sun, much like the passive cooling principles in today's green architecture. Even the placement mattered. Yachtals were often built north-facing or near water sources to maximize shade and humidity control. Archaeologists have found some that maintained temperatures as low as 5 degrees Celsius in ambient heat exceeding 50, a feat that would impress even contemporary engineers. What's often overlooked is how deeply this technology was woven into daily life. Caravanserais along the Silk Road relied on yachtals to preserve perishable goods, enabling long-distance trade in fruits and dairy. Persian physicians used the ice to reduce fever and store medicines, while chefs crafted elaborate frozen desserts like falude, a sorbet-like dish still enjoyed in Iran today. The structures became community hubs, with guards posted to prevent theft of the precious ice, a commodity so valuable it was sometimes used as currency. This raises a pressing question. In an age of climate crises and energy shortages, why aren't we reviving these ancient solutions? Modern attempts to replicate yachtals show startling promise. In Rajasthan, architects have built updated versions using compressed earth blocks, cooling hospitals in power-scarce regions. Researchers at the University of Tehran found that combining yachtal principles with solar panels could reduce cooling energy use by up to 80%. Even high-tech companies are taking notes. One startup's thermal battery draws direct inspiration from the sarouge insulation, using phase-change materials to store cold without electricity. Yet the yachtal's greatest lesson isn't about ice, it's about rethinking our relationship with innovation. Today's sustainability movement often fixates on futuristic tech, from carbon capture to fusion energy, while overlooking millennia-old practices that already solved these problems. The Persians didn't have the luxury of overpowering nature with brute force engineering. They observed, adapted, and collaborated with their environment. As we face a planet pushed to its limits, their approach whispers an alternative path, that sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the newest one, but the wisest one we've forgotten. After all, if a civilization without thermostats could keep ice solid in the desert, what other ancient wisdoms might be waiting to cool our overheating world? Along the winding rivers of southeastern Australia, where the water shimmers under the relentless sun, lie stone structures so perfectly aligned they seem to defy time itself. These are the Brewerina fish traps, an intricate network of channels and pools built by Aboriginal peoples over 40,000 years ago, making them one of the oldest known human constructions on Earth. But these aren't just random piles of rocks. They're a masterclass in sustainable engineering, designed to harvest fish without disrupting the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Picture a series of low stone walls arranged in crescent shapes, creating a labyrinth that guides fish naturally into shallow holding areas. As the water level dropped during dry seasons, fish would follow the currents, funneling effortlessly into traps where they could be gathered by hand. No nets, no hooks, just pure hydrological genius. What sets these traps apart isn't just their age, it's their precision. Each curve and angle was calculated to work with the river's natural flow, not against it. The walls were built just high enough to direct fish but low enough to let smaller ones escape, ensuring breeding populations thrived. Some channels were even designed to funnel fish toward specific pools during seasonal migrations, mimicking the natural pathways they'd follow anyway. This wasn't haphazard hunting, it was aquaculture refined over generations, a living blueprint for how to harvest without harm. Modern fisheries scientists have only recently begun adopting similar, fish-friendly designs, yet Aboriginal communities perfected them millennia ago. The traps also reveal a profound cultural philosophy. For the Ngema people who still steward these waters today, the structures were more than tools. They were part of a sacred covenant with the land. Elders passed down strict laws about when and how to fish, ensuring no single area was over-harvested. Certain pools were reserved for ceremonies or shared with neighboring clans, turning food gathering into an act of community and reciprocity. Contrast this with industrial fishing, where trawlers scrape entire seabeds clean, and the difference isn't just technological, it's spiritual. The traps embody a worldview where humans aren't conquerors of nature, but careful participants in its rhythms. Remarkably, these ancient systems still function. During droughts, when modern dams and irrigation choke rivers, the Brewerina traps continue to sustain wildlife and people alike. Their secret lies in adaptability. Unlike concrete barriers that disrupt ecosystems, the stone walls flex with the environment, shifting slightly during floods, then settling back into place. Recent studies even suggest the traps improve water quality by creating microhabitats for algae and insects, which in turn feed the fish. It's a self-renewing cycle, a testament to design so intuitive it borders on ecological alchemy. This raises a humbling question. How many modern sustainability crises could we solve by relearning such ancient wisdom? From the terraced rice paddies of Bali to the forest gardens of the Amazon, indigenous innovations prove that abundance doesn't require exploitation. The fish traps aren't relics, they're a mirror, reflecting a truth we're only now rediscovering, that the best solutions don't fight nature's logic but embrace it. Next time you stroll past a dammed river or an overfished coastline, remember there's another way, etched in stone by hands that understood balance long before the word sustainability entered our vocabulary. After all, if a civilization could feed itself for 40,000 years without emptying its rivers, what does that say about the durability of their wisdom and the urgency of ours? Inside the sacred temples of Alexandria, worshippers gasped as towering doors swung open without human touch, not by divine intervention, but by the ingenious engineering of Hero, a first-century inventor who turned steam and rope into pure spectacle. His automatic doors worked through a deceptively simple system. A hidden altar fire heated water in a bronze vessel, creating steam that flowed through pipes to counterweights. As the weights dropped, they pulled ropes connected to the temple doors, making them glide apart as if moved by invisible hands. The effect was so startling that many believed gods themselves had answered their prayers. But Hero's true genius lay in how he merged mechanics with wonder, proving that technology could be as much about awe as utility. This wasn't just a clever trick, it was part of a broader ancient tradition where art and engineering danced together. Take the legendary theater of Dionysus in Athens, where rotating panels and hidden trapdoors created illusions of gods descending from the heavens, or the mechanical singing birds crafted by Persian artisans, tiny brass creations that used water pressure to produce chirping sounds as they pivoted on jeweled axles. Even the famous Antikythera Mechanism, with its intricate bronze gears, doubled as both a scientific calculator and a celestial sculpture, its surfaces adorned with zodiac engravings that turned alongside the planets it tracked. What's often overlooked is how these inventions reveal a world where function and beauty weren't separate pursuits. The Greeks didn't build doors merely to open and close, they engineered drama into every movement. Chinese water clocks from the same era didn't just tell time, they featured miniature landscapes with floating figurines that acted out scenes with each passing hour. In Rome, Nero's rotating dining room ceiling mirrored the night sky's motion, powered by slaves turning cranks below, a feat of engineering designed to enchant guests as much as impress them. The legacy of this fusion still echoes today. Modern theme parks and stage productions use many of the same principles Hero pioneered: hidden hydraulics, weighted pulley systems, and timed reveals to create moments of magic. But there's a key difference. Where ancient inventors blurred the line between art and tech to honor the divine or explore philosophical ideas, today's versions often prioritize pure entertainment. The automatons of the past weren't just for show. They were attempts to mirror the mysteries of the universe, whether through Archimedes' planetarium or Al-Jazari's elephant clock, which used Greek water mechanics and Indian artistry to mark the hours with moving figurines. Perhaps the most poignant example lies in Daedalus' mythical wings, a story that captures the ancient obsession with transcending boundaries. While the tale is fiction, it reflects real experiments like the steam-powered Aeolipile Hero designed, a spinning sphere that hinted at the potential of flight. These weren't just gadgets, they were manifestations of humanity's oldest questions. Can machines capture the soul's creativity? Can gears and levers replicate life's poetry? The answer, etched in temple doors that still whisper of steam and wonder, is a resounding yes. After all, if a puff of vapor could make stone doors breathe, what other forgotten dialogues between art and engineering might still be waiting to inspire us? Buried in the dusty corridors of the Berlin Museum lies a 3,500-year-old papyrus that reveals one of history's most unexpected medical breakthroughs, an ancient Egyptian pregnancy test with eerie accuracy. The Kahun papyrus, written around 1800 BC, describes a method so elegantly simple it feels almost mystical. A woman would urinate on separate bags of barley and wheat seeds. If the barley sprouted, she was pregnant with a boy. If the wheat grew, a girl. No sprouting meant no pregnancy. What sounds like superstition, however, holds a kernel of startling scientific truth. Modern studies confirm that pregnant urine does accelerate seed germination due to its high estrogen levels, making this the world's first known bioassay. The genius of this test lies in its empirical foundation. Egyptian physicians didn't just guess, they observed patterns over generations, noting correlations between pregnancy and accelerated plant growth long before hormones were understood. The sex prediction, while less scientifically validated, may have linked to subtle hormonal differences that affected grain response. Recent experiments at Cairo University found the barley test accurate about 70% of the time, a remarkable feat for an era without microscopes or chemistry. But here's what's truly fascinating. This wasn't an isolated practice. Across the Nile, similar tests used onions inserted vaginally overnight. If a woman's breath smelled of onions by morning, her open cervix, a sign of non-pregnancy, had allowed the odor to circulate. These methods reveal a profound understanding of bodily changes long before modern diagnostics. The Ebers papyrus details other observational marvels, tracking menstrual cycles, recognizing diabetes through sweet-tasting urine, even diagnosing pregnancy by palpating arteries near the uterus. Each technique relied on nature as a laboratory, turning plants and bodily fluids into diagnostic tools. This wasn't magic, it was proto-science, built on meticulous record-keeping and trial-and-error experimentation. Yet the real innovation wasn't just the test itself, it was the cultural framework around it. Pregnancy diagnostics were part of a broader tradition where medicine and agriculture intertwined. The same priests who studied seed germination also oversaw fertility rites, blending practical observation with spiritual belief. Temples kept gardens specifically for these tests, treating them with the same reverence as surgical instruments. In a society where childbirth was both celebrated and perilous, early detection wasn't just convenient, it was life-saving, allowing midwives to prepare for high-risk deliveries or counsel women on herbal contraceptives if needed. What modern medicine often dismisses as folk wisdom emerges here as something far richer, a dialogue between humans and their environment, where a humble grain of barley could reveal secrets the body itself hadn't yet shown. Today's pregnancy tests, with their monoclonal antibodies and digital readouts, are descendants of this ancient ingenuity, proving that diagnostic breakthroughs don't always begin in labs. Sometimes they sprout from the earth itself, whispering answers to those patient enough to listen. Imagine sending a letter from Rome to Britain and having it arrive faster than some modern parcel services could manage today. That was the power of the cursus publicus, the Roman Empire's state-run courier network that turned the sprawling expanse of conquered territories into a tightly connected web of communication. At its peak, this system spanned 50,000 miles of roads, with relay stations strategically placed every 10 miles, where fresh horses and riders stood ready to sprint the next leg of the journey. Messages could travel up to 200 miles in a single day, a speed unmatched until the Pony Express galloped onto the scene 2,000 years later. But here's what's truly astonishing. This wasn't just about speed. The Romans engineered a logistical masterpiece that balanced efficiency, security, and adaptability in ways modern systems still struggle to replicate. The secret weapon wasn't just the roads, though the famed Roman highways certainly helped, but the meticulous organization behind every galloping hoofbeat. Each relay station, or mutations, functioned like a pit stop in a grand, never-ending race. Riders carried messages in lightweight leather pouches, passing them like batons to the next courier without breaking stride. Horses were swapped so frequently that no single animal ever tired, maintaining a blistering pace from dawn until dusk, but the real innovation lay in the paperwork. Every shipment came with a diploma, a sealed travel warrant that detailed the route, authorized fresh mounts, and even allocated food and lodging. Lose your diploma, and the system ground to a halt, an ancient version of two-factor authentication. What's often overlooked is how this network doubled as an early surveillance tool. Station masters logged every courier's arrival and departure, creating a paper trail that could reconstruct a message journey down to the hour. Suspicious delays triggered investigations, and forgery of travel warrants carried severe penalties. In an era without satellites or wiretaps, the cursus publicus wasn't just moving letters. It was policing the empire's information highways. Augustus himself had established the system to keep tabs on distant provinces, proving that control wasn't just about legions, but about who controlled the narrative. Yet for all its military precision, the system had a softer side. Alongside state dispatches, the cursus publicus carried personal letters, merchant invoices, and even academic correspondence between philosophers. Seneca wrote of receiving scrolls from Athens in days rather than months, while Pliny the Younger complained about bureaucratic bottlenecks delaying his wine shipments. This blend of official and civilian use made it more than a postal service. It was the bloodstream of Roman culture, pulsing with everything from tax records to poetry. The echoes of this ancient network are everywhere today. The Pony Express mimicked its relay structure, while modern highway rest stops owe a nod to those mutations dotting Roman roads. Even the word post itself comes from the Latin positus, meaning station. But the real lesson isn't about infrastructure, it's about foresight. The Romans didn't just build roads, they built a system to maximize their potential, proving that communication isn't just about the message, but the machinery that carries it. In an age of instant digital contact, their horse-powered internet still holds a surprising truth. Sometimes, the fastest way to connect a world isn't by changing the medium, but by perfecting the method. Bamboo ribs stretching like spider silk, waxed silk shimmering like a second sky, the first Chinese umbrellas weren't just shields from rain, but floating canvases of artistry and power. Crafted over 2,400 years ago during the Zhou dynasty, these early marvels began as exclusive symbols of rank. Only the emperor and high officials could stroll beneath their protective arcs, the silk canopies embroidered with celestial motifs, and the wax coating infused with fragrant resins to scent the air as they passed. What started as a royal accessory, however, would soon unfold into something far more democratic, revealing how even the most practical inventions carry layers of cultural meaning. The transformation from status symbol to everyday essential began with material ingenuity. Artisans discovered that multiple layers of wax-treated silk could repel water while remaining lightweight, a revelation that predated modern waterproofing by millennia. But the real breakthrough lay in the collapsible frame. Unlike rigid parasols of ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, Chinese umbrellas used hinged bamboo ribs that could expand and contract like the wings of a bird. This wasn't just convenience, it was portable architecture, allowing scholars to carry shaded solitude into mountain landscapes or merchants to keep market goods dry during monsoons. By the Tang dynasty, even farmers carried versions made of oiled paper, their humble designs echoing the elegance of the imperial courts. Yet the umbrella's journey wasn't just about function, it was a mirror of societal shifts. During the Song dynasty, when civil service exams opened pathways to power, umbrellas became markers of scholarly ambition. Candidates traveling to exams carried them as badges of intellectual pursuit, their canopies often inscribed with poetry. Meanwhile, in marriage rituals, red umbrellas shielded brides from evil spirits, their vibrant hues symbolizing joy and protection. Even in death, paper umbrellas adorned graves, guiding souls to the afterlife. The object had transcended its physical form, becoming a cultural shorthand for everything from privilege to piety. What's often overlooked is how this symbolism crossed borders. Along the Silk Road, Chinese umbrellas inspired Persian sunshades and European parasols, each culture adapting the design to its own values. In Japan, oil paper wagasa evolved into art forms, their spines numbering in the dozens for structural perfection. In contrast, Victorian England turned parasols into fashion statements, embedding them with lace and frills. A far cry from their pragmatic origins, the umbrella's spread wasn't just about keeping dry. It was a testament to how utility and meaning traveled together, reshaping themselves in every new context. Today, as we shake out cheap nylon umbrellas after a downpour, it's easy to forget their storied past. But next time you press the button to unfurl that telescoping canopy, remember, you're activating a legacy that once shaded emperors, inspired poets, and bridged continents. From scented silk to mass-produced polyester, the umbrella's evolution reminds us that even the simplest shelters can hold entire histories within their ribs. After all, isn't it fitting that an invention designed to protect us from storms would itself weather the winds of time so effortlessly? Etched into clay tablets beneath the flickering torchlight of Mesopotamian temples, the world's first zodiac wasn't about horoscopes or fortune-telling. It was a precision tool for mapping the cosmos. These ancient astronomers, scribbling in cuneiform as early as 3000 BCE, didn't just name constellations. They calculated planetary movements with a rigor that would make modern astrophysicists pause. Take the Venus tablet of Amasajuka, a 700-year record of the planet's cycle so accurate it still helps scientists calibrate ancient timelines today. Unlike later Greek or Roman zodiacs steeped in mythology, the Mesopotamian version functioned more like a celestial spreadsheet, tracking Jupiter's retrograde motions or predicting lunar eclipses down to the hour. Their secret, a brutal honesty with data. temple scribes meticulously logged every observation, even when the stars misbehaved, recording anomalies that later cultures would dismiss as errors. What's often forgotten is how these star charts doubled as agricultural almanacs. The zodiac's 12 divisions aligned not just with celestial patterns, but with the rhythm of planting and harvest. When the constellation Mul appinned the plough rose before dawn, farmers knew to prepare their fields. When the Pleiades vanished in spring, it signaled the start of the flood season. This wasn't astrology, it was applied science, weaving astronomy into the very fabric of survival. Modern scholars have discovered that some Mesopotamian star paths correlate with climate cycles, suggesting these ancient sky watchers understood celestial patterns could predict weather shifts centuries before the term meteorology existed. Yet the real revolution lay in their mathematics. To plot planetary motions, Mesopotamians developed a base 60 numbering system. The reason we still divide circles into 360 degrees and hours into 60 minutes. Their calculations of lunar phases were accurate to within 4 minutes per month, a feat requiring generations of cumulative observation. One tablet from Uruk even details a method for predicting solar eclipses by tracking the Saros cycle, a repeating 18-year pattern of lunar and solar alignments. These weren't mystic hunches, they were the product of relentless empiricism, with priest astronomers cross-checking records across temples in Babylon, Nineveh, and Sippar. So why does history remember these stargazers as mere astrologers? Part of the answer lies in the Babylonian exile, when Hebrew scribes encountered their cosmology and distilled it into symbolic stories. By the time Greek philosophers adopted the zodiac, its original quantitative brilliance had been overshadowed by qualitative symbolism. But the deeper irony is this: modern astronomy still relies on Mesopotamian foundations. The very concept of dividing the sky into 12 sectors, their invention, the idea that planets follow predictable paths, they proved it. Even NASA, a jet propulsion laboratory, has used their eclipse data to study Earth's historical rotation rates. Perhaps the lesson isn't just about stars, but about how knowledge transforms across millennia. The Mesopotamians remind us that the line between science and spirituality hasn't always been so stark, that wonder and precision can coexist. Next time you glance at a horoscope, remember, buried beneath those whimsical symbols is a legacy of rigorous observation that helped turn humanity's gaze from the dirt beneath our feet to the infinite expanse above. Fog blankets the North Atlantic, swallowing the horizon whole, a nightmare for any sailor trying to find their way. But Viking navigators faced these conditions with nothing more than a wooden disc the size of a dinner plate. These sun compasses, or solarsteinar, were marvels of simplicity and precision. Carved with precise notches along their edges, the discs worked by tracking the shadow cast by a central gnomon, a small, upright pin. At noon, when the sun reached its highest point, the shadow would align with specific markings, revealing true north even when the magnetic compasses of later centuries spun uselessly near the pole. What makes these devices extraordinary isn't just their functionality, but their adaptability. Archaeologists discovered a fragment of one such compass in Greenland. Its markings calibrated for a latitude around 61 degrees north, perfect for voyages between Norway and Iceland. But here's the twist: Vikings didn't rely on a single, static design. Adjustable compasses, like the Unartok artifact found in Greenland, featured movable gnomons and additional arcs to account for seasonal changes in the sun's path. This meant a seasoned navigator could recalibrate the tool depending on whether it was the height of summer or the depths of winter, compensating for the sun's shifting angle with stunning accuracy. Yet the sun compass was only part of a broader navigational toolkit. Norse sagas mention the solstein, or sunstone, a crystal believed to detect the sun's position even through dense cloud cover. When paired with the compass, these tools formed a fail-safe system, one for clear skies, the other for overcast gloom. Together, they allowed Vikings to traverse thousands of miles of open ocean, reaching as far as Newfoundland without charts or magnetic aids. Modern recreations prove their effectiveness. A team using a replica sun compass and sunstone successfully navigated from Norway to Greenland with near historical accuracy, drifting off course by less than 5% over a 1,000-mile journey. The legacy of these innovations stretches far beyond the Viking Age. Early polar explorers like Fridtjof Nansen adapted similar principles for Arctic navigation, while modern researchers study sun compasses to develop non-technological backup systems for ships and aircraft. There's even talk of integrating Viking-style solar navigation into future Mars rovers, where magnetic compasses would be useless. But the real question lingers: how much other high-latitude ingenuity have we overlooked? The Sami people's star-based reindeer migration maps, or the Inuits' ability to read wind patterns in sea ice, suggest entire libraries of Arctic knowledge still waiting to be decoded. The Vikings didn't just conquer the North, they listened to it, turning its challenges into solutions. And in an era of satellite dependence, their sun compass wisdom whispers a timely reminder: sometimes the oldest tools hold the sharpest edge. From life-saving medical tools to forgotten computing devices, these 42 ancient inventions reveal a truth we often overlook: brilliance isn't bound by era. The past wasn't some primitive prelude to modern genius. It was a laboratory of relentless innovation, where minds just as sharp as ours solved problems with creativity that still leaves us stunned. Think about the last time you poured your morning coffee. That ritual connects you directly to 9th century Ethiopian goatherds who first harnessed the energizing power of those red berries. Or consider the humble lock on your front door, its design echoing pin tumbler mechanisms carved by Egyptian artisans 4,000 years ago. These aren't just historical footnotes, they're living proof that ingenuity thrives in every age. What's most humbling is realizing how much we've lost. The Antikythera Mechanism's celestial calculations, the Inca's earthquake-resistant architecture, the Persian Windcatchers that cooled buildings without a watt of electricity. These weren't just clever gadgets. They represented entire schools of thought, ways of interacting with the world that vanished when empires fell or knowledge was hoarded. The Roman concrete that self-heals cracks. We're only now reverse engineering its secrets. The Mayas vulcanized rubber, bouncy and durable enough for ceremonial ball games. It took until the 19th century for Charles Goodyear to rediscover the process. These gaps in history aren't just curiosities, they're cautionary tales about the fragility of progress. Yet the most exciting part isn't what was lost, it's what might still be found. For every invention we've uncovered, there are likely dozens more waiting in crumbling manuscripts or buried ruins. Imagine stumbling upon a library that preserved the full works of Hero of Alexandria, or a shipwreck carrying some unknown Babylonian computing device. The past isn't finished speaking to us. Modern scientists now scour ancient texts for overlooked remedies, while engineers study Mayan water systems for drought solutions. Even space agencies look to indigenous navigation techniques for future Mars missions. The dialogue between past and present isn't just academic, it's a lifeline to sustainable innovation. So the next time you check the weather on your phone, remember Zhang Heng's earthquake-detecting dragons. When you slip on water-resistant shoes, thank those Mesopotamian glassmakers who first turned sand into transparency. History isn't a straight line from primitive to advanced, it's a spiral, where old ideas often circle back with new relevance. Which of these 42 inventions reshaped your view of the ancient world? Was it the Viking Sun Compass that conquered oceans without magnets, or the Egyptian pregnancy test rooted in botany rather than chemistry? Drop your favorites in the comments and let's keep unraveling these hidden threads together. After all, the best discoveries aren't just about digging up the past, they're about realizing how much it still has to teach us. Don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten corners of history where every artifact whispers, "You think this